Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276. Scumwind. No matter what, Fanny was very satisfied with the special effects module specially made for her by Nanling. Her status has skyrocketed. In addition, she just performed a miracle in front of people and didn't have to worry about her father's safety. She started to play badly again. Let's replenish our own materials first, and play another game while waiting. It seems that she has temporarily forgotten the boredom of various previous studies and is ready to put her knowledge into practice. The people on the Zooxia were not unhappy about this. At this time, the spacecraft was drifting in a lonely star system. This star system is very small, with only a rocky planet very close and a gas planet at the far end. The Zooxia steadily descended to the surface of the gas planet. It entered the violent atmosphere on the surface of the planet, and then opened the supply hatch to start extracting the planet's inexhaustible gas elements. To be honest, looking at the terrifying storm around and the thunderstorms that continued to erupt in the thick clouds, Nanling and Mo both wanted to feel the wind and thunder here together. But what can I do about that guy? Hey, just play with me for one round, just one round. She started to act like a spoiled child. There will be plenty of opportunities for enlightenment in the future. Just like the evil ghosts in college who urged the good men to stay up all night with them. Okay, just one round. Nanling was tempted. After all, the challenges in the Galaxy Fairy Guest were very interesting and could verify and improve what they had learned. Mo had already accepted her fate. She would never refuse Fanny in her life. Of course, there was another Nanling now. The opinions of others were ignored, so Zooxia and the other 5 fought for 3 days and 3 nights on this nameless gas planet. This is really what happened to the agreement to play only one round? Almost. I think we found the right way, and we were just a little bit away from winning. Fanny looked unwilling. But they still lost, and after persisting until they ran out of ammunition and food again, they were swallowed up by the endless nether locusts. Nanling was silent for a moment, then sighed and said, I think there are some problems with our rotation. Now we can persist to this extent because of the group blessing technique. But among us, only the boss and Sister Mo of Jindan, and Thongxi and I are both foundation building, which actually becomes a weakness. As long as either Thongxi or I break through to the Jindan level, we can do better in rotation and rest, and our endurance will definitely be greatly increased. Thongxi was silent. Although he was already at the 9th level of foundation building and the 10th level was within reach, he still felt that he was dragging his feet. What was going on? The main reason was that he really had no opinions of his own in terms of cultivation. It was all because Nanling, Fanny and Mo occasionally understood some of the things they said when discussing cultivation, and then promoted cultivation after some understanding. He knew that his qualifications in cultivation were far inferior to those of these 3. Mo was the first to notice Thongxi's loss, but she was indifferent because she didn't care much about Thongxi's thoughts. She just said to Nanling gently, don't be in a hurry, slowly accumulate your foundation. Building a foundation is a rare opportunity, so don't be too impatient. Thongxi was worried that his cultivation was not fast enough, while Mo was worried that Nanling would regret it if he progressed too fast. The difference was too big. Fanny said cheerfully, what's the matter? I think there are many places we can optimize and improve in addition to cultivation. There is no need to focus on one point. For example, we can see if we can develop some new psychic weapons. I think our firepower will be enough to deal with a large number of ordinary locusts in the later stage, but we can only deal with those particularly powerful individuals ourselves, which involves too much of our energy in the later stage. This is indeed an idea. Nanling nodded seriously and said, yes, it would be best if we can also design defensive weapons that can be combined, so that we can use relatively simple individuals in the early stage, and then improve the combination in the later stage, so as not to waste the resources spent in the early stage. This is indeed a very feasible plan, which can greatly optimize the use of its own resources. But at the same time, it also means that they will continue to spend a lot of time on building such a new defensive system. Fanny's face was flattering at the time, and she didn't expect that the topic would return to learning. She knew what was coming, however, everyone on the Zooxia, except her, showed an excited look. This was equivalent to a new direction for improvement. Why not do it? So when they left this nameless gas planet for the second round of 2-month hyperspace journey, everyone except Fanny was full of energy. In the next 2 months, they had another round of astonishing rapid improvement. It seemed that such a hyperspace journey was particularly suitable for academic research. Anyway, everyone was making rapid progress in hyperspace. The combined weapon module was developed very quickly, and it didn't even take much time. But the problem was how to make these weapon modules exert great power after being combined. One is to combine the same attributes, but the effect is not obvious, and its effect is only slightly better than the conventional volley attack. Another idea is to combine different attributes. This is a good topic. However, the combination of psychic weapons with thunder and fire attributes is obviously not feasible. These two powers are too violent. If they are activated together, it is easy to explode. The wind attribute can be combined with both thunder and fire attributes, and it can well enhance the power of both. After testing the power of the wind and fire combination, Fanna couldn't help but mutter, "I didn't expect the wind attribute to be so bad, just like the central air conditioner." Nanling was very angry about this, always feeling that she was blaming someone in a roundabout way. God has mercy on him, he has been a well-behaved person from the beginning to the end, and has never done anything beyond the limit. But he didn't want to say much about this, but subconsciously had an inspiration and said, "Why not try to use the wind as a medium to combine all three forces?" This is definitely a groundbreaking idea, which simply brings the bad attribute of the wind to the extreme. The two girls are also very interested in this topic. The first thing they do is to achieve the combination of the three attributes with their own abilities. This is very easy to do, mainly because the three of them have absolute control over their own power. The power of the three attributes is connected together, and as Nanling expected, under the coordination of the wind, thunder and fire finally work together. Its lethality is not as simple as 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, this is an unscientific 1 + 1 + 1 = 9. 3 times, directly increased to 3 times the lethality. The three of them looked at each other in bewilderment. They clearly just wanted to develop a weapon module that could be combined and enhanced, but how come they seem to have invented a 3-person joint attack technique first? Nanling suddenly thought, why not call it 3-point return to Yuan Qi? Chapter 277 How about putting your knowledge into practice? 3 parts return to the original Qi was a joke of Nanlin, but he didn't expect it to become a reality in the end. They really developed a corresponding defensive system in this way and couldn't wait to verify it. At the beginning, they suffered several failures in succession, because the new defensive system had just been established and needed more verification. But later, with the improvement of proficiency, especially the breakthrough progress of the Redstone Defense Array, they finally made significant progress. In the game space of Galaxy Xiang, a brand new game is being played. Fanny, Nanling and Mo rushed into the void together, directly selected the largest asteroid nearby to melt it, separate the materials, and then shape it into a huge fusion furnace. It is like a small sun, emitting light and heat in the void of the universe. Then countless asteroids were pulled over by Nanling with wind magic, thrown into the furnace as fuel, and then refined into various precious materials. The production capacity of the super-large heavy fusion reactor is not comparable to that of the medium-sized reactors such as the landing module. Under Liji's control, a large-scale base was developed in a short period of time. At this time, Thongxia started to set up the defense of the base. They had completely given up the reconnaissance work. At this time, a small group of nether locusts had begun to attack. They would attack continuously, and there would be no chance for people to breathe in the process, but the offensive would become stronger and stronger. In this case, Zhuoxia and the others had already given up the mobile forces and directly strengthened the defensive facilities. The opponent's offensive was getting stronger and stronger, so they had to continuously iterate the defensive facilities so that the base's defensive capability could keep up with the speed of the nether locusts. In the early stage, the personal military support of Fanny and Mo would be very needed. In the later stage, when the defensive position was completely formed, Fanny, Mo and Nanling would need to control the position together, reasonably allocate their own cultivation and the status of the spirit furnace, and support each other. This is also the reason why Nanling felt that his higher cultivation would be better. Although he was good enough, if his overall cultivation was only at the foundation building level, it would eventually make this defensive formation look a bit sloppy. Fortunately, the final 3-point return to Origin cannon was proved to be able to penetrate the strongest individual of the enemy so far, which was very gratifying. It was a pity that they had to try again, but Liji said in a disappointing tone, "The second cycle of navigation is about to end, and we can continue to try in the next cycle." To be honest, Li Ji didn't feel much about this kind of thing, although she felt that she was about to become a warrior in her calculations and operations. Everyone could only end this round, which was the best so far, and didn't feel any regret. Because this round of the game had actually begun to show signs of decline, the problem was with Nanlin, his cultivation was a little behind. For this reason, he began to think about whether he could make another plug-in spiritual power core in the game. Why couldn't he configure multiple spiritual furnaces? In theory, because of the existence of spiritual furnaces, the amount of spiritual power should not be a factor that limits the performance of cultivators, and their own spiritual power is the key. Nanling shared his ideas with everyone, and it became the main development direction of this rest period. At the same time, Nanling asked Mrs. Rose from a distance, "Where is the Death Star pirates now?" Mrs. Rose replied, "They just appeared in the starfield near the city of Nago, and obviously just completed the first navigation cycle. Don't worry, they can't catch up with you. At most, they will follow you back to the Star Federation." Nanling frowned slightly when he heard this, and he asked, "I remember that we didn't leak the news that we were going to the Star Federation, right?" Madame Rose sighed. "This is actually not difficult to guess. As long as someone who is familiar with your eldest lady gives her a psychological profile, it is easy to understand that even if she gave up the Galaxy Fairy contest, she would never give up the plan to go to the Star Federation in her heart. Because it is far enough from the ancient domain, and she longs for freedom. Also, it is the host of the Galaxy Fairy Finals. She would like to see what kind of heroes will appear in the game she gave up. How will they compare with her?" Nanling glanced at Fanny, who was lying on Mole like a mangy dog and asking for a hug. He responded calmly, "Although the result is correct, they seem to think Fanny is a little too proud." Lady Rose said, "Originally, I didn't have this idea, but when you guys made a big fuss in Nago Star City and Fanny appeared in front of the world with an arrogant attitude, everyone thought she was an extremely proud and conceited person." Nanling. He didn't know how to explain it. It was obviously he who pushed for the trip to the Star Federation, and the reason why Fanny showed up in front of people was to try out the effect of the special effects device. Well, let's not talk about it. Anyway, they guessed the result correctly. What's more, there is the shadow of the Oracle behind the Death Star pirates, so it should be natural to know their direction, right? Nanling gave up talking nonsense with his mother and shared the information he got. When Fanny knew that the Death Star pirates had actually caught up, she said angrily, "Why don't we kill him?" "Very good, this is very funny." Mo frowned and said, "There's no need to make things complicated. After all, as long as we reach the Star Federation, they will be helpless against us." Fanny said, "But I don't feel happy." She looked at Nanling expectantly, fully trusting that he could give her a satisfactory solution again. Mo also looked at Nanling. She was waiting for Nanling to give her a reason to convince her. She knew that Nanling would definitely side with Fanny at this time. Nanling felt his scalp tingling when they looked at him, but considering his status as an employee, he sighed and said, "How can you guard against thieves for 1,000 days?" Mo's eyes moved, and he said to himself, "Sure enough." Nanling felt a little guilty, but then he said, "I'm also considering our future journey. After all, no one wants to worry about being stalked by such a powerful fleet all the time during the future journey, right? Instead of that, it's better to nip the danger in the bud as soon as possible." Mo asked seriously, "But the other side has a whole fleet and people supporting them behind them. No one knows how strong their force will be when they come to chase us." Nanling said, "But we have the intelligence advantage and are ahead of them by an entire cycle. We can use intelligence to roughly determine where they will dock in the next cycle or even the next cycle. As for us, why not try to put what we've learned into practice?" When the phrase "put what we've learned into practice" came out, everyone was surprised. Nanling said, "It is said that Galaxy Fairy is an absolutely realistic game. Since we can build a super large fusion reactor and base in that game, why not try it in reality? Let's try what kind of power we can build in a month in reality. Let's also try to see how much superiority our self-developed weapon system has over traditional weapons and protection." Mo's eyes flickered. There was no doubt that she was persuaded. Even she was like this, and Fanny was already eager to try and was completely excited. Even Thongshik couldn't hide his expectations. This way of learning and applying immediately aroused his enthusiasm. Mo finally looked at Nanling and said, "Just spoil her." She seemed to be complaining, but in fact she was amazed in her heart. She felt that Nanling was just like a devil who easily aroused people's desires. Chapter 278 Reality is simpler. Nanling's proposal was unanimously passed, and even Mo was very excited about it. After Nanling bought a lot of intelligence from Madame Rose, they couldn't wait to enter the third navigation cycle. There are 5 navigation cycles in total, which means a total of 10 months of hyperspace travel time. Normally, there will be 1 to 2 weeks of rest between each cycle, which is why the entire journey is generally calculated as a year. This time, everyone is obviously ready to solve all problems before the 4th navigation cycle arrives. They have a whole cycle of time to prepare in advance. If they can predict the landing point of the Death Star pirates, then this matter will be very promising. Before that, they can practice their tactics in the Galaxy Ferry. So in the next 2 months, everyone on the Zhuoxia honed their operational and tactical capabilities with great enthusiasm. The time they can hold on in the Plagued Locusts is getting longer and longer, so that when the 3-month third cycle of navigation time ends, they have maintained the longest defensive battle, 150 days in virtual space and half a month in real time. After the end of this voyage cycle, everyone on the ship woke up and immediately slept for 3 days. The mental consumption was too great. Correspondingly, a completely different temperament began to permeate everyone. The experience of such a long time in that Galaxy Ferry can no longer be simply summarized by the word game. Everyone has an inexplicable feeling in their hearts, as if they have completed a transformation, but it is vague and hard to figure out. They all have a feeling in their hearts that perhaps they really need a real combat experience to fully stimulate this transformation. Mrs. Rose sent a message at this time. The Death Star pirates have entered the 3rd voyage cycle. It has been confirmed that they are chasing you. The landing point has been calculated very clearly. Their fleet needs to be replenished but cannot be replenished at regular airports, so they can only be quickly replenished in large quantities in some specific places. Are you really going to do this? She was not worried at first, but she didn't expect that her sons and daughters-in-law would love to make trouble so much. Nanling said, "Don't worry, we are sure of this kind of thing." During the communication, the Zhuoxia had already stopped in the dark asteroid belt in the boundless void. This asteroid belt is not dense, it should be the pumice produced after the destruction of a certain galaxy. There are several looters' bases hidden in this not-so-dense asteroid belt, and what they have to do now is to find a remote corner in it and then find a suitable asteroid to build a base. This is an exciting time to put what they have learned into practice. After resting, Nanlin, Fan and I and Mo each put on combat armor and took their own spiritual treasures to an asteroid with a diameter of 700 kilometers. This asteroid is large enough for them to directly create a super-large refusion furnace. Fan and I rushed into the interior of the asteroid under the golden light of the scorching sun with a strange cry, and then melted the entire asteroid into a magma fireball in a way that is far more efficient than in the game. This is amazing. They considered that the actual operation would be more difficult in reality, but they never thought that they would perform even better in actual operation. Mo also took action. She used Linyu to control the powerful magnetic field, and immediately extracted the metal minerals in the lava, and simultaneously completed the most efficient purification and classification. Afterwards, the alloy was smelted, and the 3 of them used their divine thoughts to quickly manufacture parts and splice them together. A huge reactor made entirely of alloy, which looked huge and crude, was made. Efficient and simple. When this super-large heavy fusion reactor was successfully operated, the 3 of them couldn't believe that they could do it so easily. It must be said that the effect of Zhuori and Lingyu in this process cannot be ignored. The blessing of these 2 spiritual treasures on the abilities of their respective owners was fully reflected at this time. Then Liji took over the furnace, and Nanling and Mo were responsible for collecting materials. But this time the effect was amazing. Mo probably realized how powerful Lingyu's blessing was on her, so she simply released a powerful magnetic field with Lingyu. Many asteroids in the surrounding distance were captured by this magnetic field, and then quickly moved towards this side. Nanling looked at his wife in amazement. He didn't expect Mo to be so fierce after having Lingyu. This made Nanling regret it. If he had known that his first spiritual treasure would be a wind attribute, why did he have to make a fire attribute just to verify the flame technique? Now, he had to make a thunder attribute before making a wind attribute spiritual treasure, otherwise he couldn't stand Mo's resentful eyes. This was an incredible and ridiculous reality. Compared to the game of Galaxy Fairy, everyone seemed to be able to do better in reality. This was mainly reflected in the strengthening of spiritual treasures. Even Nanling could use the Fire Wing Flying Sword to achieve achievements that he could not imagine. But because he didn't have a wind attribute spiritual treasure, he seemed to be the weakest link again. This was a big hurtful. Seeing that the entire base was running in a more efficient way, he couldn't help but start preparing to improve himself. The first important link was that he had to refine another thunder knife and a wind gun. These were mature technologies, and he felt that he could make them first when he had time. After such a busy month, they had accumulated a huge amount of resources and productivity, and the next step was to start production at full capacity. Because they didn't have to worry about enemies attacking them like in the game, they were very calm at this time. They skipped the primary stage and directly took out the most mature and complete designs. That is, the 3-point return to origin floating gun system. There is also the mobile base plan. This is because they have been in hyperspace for 150 consecutive game days without any results, and because all resources have been invested in fixed defense, they can only passively defend and struggle to support without any response. So everyone worked together to come up with the floating gun system and the mobile base plan. Now they can try it directly in reality. Speaking of which, this game can be played 10 times longer, although it is more energy consuming, but the completely real data space has 10 times the time difference, which is really great for researchers. At least for everyone on the Eudoxia, their mental strength is strong enough to withstand this tenfold daily loss. After Nanling realized the advantages of this game, he suddenly felt that this might be a cheat for all mankind by the big guys behind the Galaxy Fairy Guest. Of course, there are conditions for using this cheat. Ordinary people who are not digital life forms or cultivators cannot use it for a long time. And those whose thinking ability has surpassed that of ordinary people cannot use it either, because the thinking speed of such beings may be even faster than this tenfold acceleration. But no matter what, this game has saved a lot of time for everyone on Eudoxia, and even brought them to the edge of some kind of transformation. Taking this step, perhaps things will be completely different. Chapter 279. Accumulation of Strengths. Nanling spent a month to complete 2 spiritual treasures. The blade of the first one is like a wing with a blazing lightning. When it is closed, it is a nearly 3-meter long sword, and when it is spread out, it is a pair of blazing and magnificent thunder winds, which are very majestic and intimidating, and complement the fire-winged flying sword. It is called the Thunder Wing Jin blade, and Jin means big and bright, which fits the image of this spiritual treasure. The second spear body is like a dragon, and the spear tip is like a sword. When it dances, there will be a hurricane, and the piercing is like a sharp aura. It is called the Dragon Flying Wing Spear. These 2 are spiritual treasure materials with independent spiritual furnaces, but Nanling did not set up wisdom cores for them. He now feels that it is too wasteful to put the wisdom core on this. And now he can choose one of them to refine. Originally, he planned to use the Fire Wing Flying Sword before the Golden Core, but he didn't expect that because he had previously injected all his spiritual thoughts into the Fire Wing Flying Sword in order to avoid the Azura field, that certainly put him in danger, but it also greatly accelerated the process of refining the Fire Wing Flying Sword. Now the Fire Wing Flying Sword has been completely refined by him, and he can use it as if it were his arm. Then he naturally has to consider refining the next spiritual treasure. Under the current circumstances, it is undoubtedly more efficient to directly refine the dragon-flying dancing wind spear, but the problem is that he had promised Mo to refine the thunder attribute spiritual treasure first. Nanling thought about it and suddenly felt that he didn't rush to make a decision. He took this opportunity to practice seriously for a while. To be honest, after 3 flights in the hyperspace, he actually fully stimulated the potential of his current body. Although his body was sleeping, the blazing fire of his spirit, the key in his sandalwood, and the spiritual thoughts between his eyebrows were all connected together, allowing him to achieve a slow but stable circuit to circulate even if his body was almost still. In fact, not only had his spirit accumulated to the limit at this time, but his sandalwood was also full, and his spirit was even fuller. He felt that he could start the next stage of cultivation, but he lacked some spiritual power. Well, it seems that it is okay to not have that spiritual power. He always felt that something was wrong. He felt that his physical state at this time had clearly reached the level of perfect foundation building, but he had only filled 8 of the 10 spiritual arrays in his body, and was about to start the 9th spiritual array. According to the modern concept of cultivation, he would only be considered to have completed the foundation building when all 10 spiritual arrays were completely filled. But why did he already have some sense of perfection? He suddenly remembered his own state. He had always studied ancient cultivation, so did it mean that he was already in a perfect state among ancient cultivation at this time? He was not sure. After all, he had no way of knowing what a real ancient cultivation looked like. If he had known that he would travel to this future era and cultivate immortals, he would have been a good person in his previous life and at least memorized the Tao Ching. Unlike now, he was completely blind, and he could only continue to dare not cross the realm according to the current method. So, what he had to do now was to accumulate spiritual power for the remaining 2 spiritual arrays. He had been deliberately suppressing this aspect before, but now he finally opened the spirit furnace to guide the spiritual power stored in the spirit furnace into his body. This is the routine operation of this era, but the spiritual power in the spirit furnace is relatively violent and must be slowly refined. However, Nanling's body is now very durable. The wind spiritual power has already transformed his whole body with the essence, and now with the wind spiritual power in the spirit furnace, he feels that his meridians are under no pressure. So he slowly released the amount of infusion, so that the speed of the original influx like a stream slowly became like a stream, but there is still no pressure. He didn't know that his body was so strong, and it was really easy to swallow these spiritual powers. Of course, this is also related to the fact that he has not used the spiritual power in the spirit furnace for a long time. After all, the spiritual power in the spirit furnace is connected to his Tanzthong and exists close to him, and in fact, it will be affected by his will unconsciously. This is actually a preliminary refining process. And now when he needs these preliminary refined spiritual powers, it is naturally twice the result with half the effort. He gradually grew bolder and began to release his own restrictions, allowing the spiritual power to flow into his meridians and spiritual formations like rivers flowing into the sea. In one day, the 9th spiritual formation, which was originally expected to take 3 months of hard practice to fill, was filled up just like that. This means that he completed the 9th level of foundation building in 1 day. However, this is not the end. The completion of the 9th level of foundation building did not bring much special feeling to Nanlin, whose body was in perfect state. If there was any, it was a kind of icing on the cake. He simply started to practice the 10th level of foundation building in 1 go. Anyway, it was still a long time before he set the time. At this time, he can actually be said to be a typical example of accumulating strength and then releasing it. His body has reached a state of perfection under the polishing of the 3 elements of spirit, energy and spirit. At this time, no matter how much spiritual power is injected, it is easy to catch without worrying about the risk of losing control. In 3 days, the 10th level took twice as long as the 9th level, but he finally reached the 10th level of foundation building at a speed beyond common sense, which is a theoretically perfect state. Nanling opened his eyes and felt that his Danton, which was full of fire, seemed to have become a black hole, constantly attracting his spirit and spirit to collapse into it. It was indeed different. The 10 layers of spiritual arrays in his body were full, which actually squeezed his spirit and spirit to a certain extent, making the elemental forces in his body seem to gather together involuntarily. Nanling immediately felt the feeling of Mo's hard work in suppressing the realm at the time, and understood why Fana could achieve the golden elixir again without knowing it. It was indeed easy to lose control. But Nanling still decided to suppress the state. It was not that he could not achieve the golden elixir, but he felt that these spiritual arrays were like icing on the cake anyway, so why couldn't he add 2 different colored flowers? So he crossed his 10 fingers into a fire seal with a fearless mood, and then suddenly introduced a pure fire spirit power from his completely refined fire wind flying sword into his body. This was to engrave another layer of fire spirit array on top of the 10 layers of wind spirit array. Is his fire control technique not high enough? That was not the point. In his opinion, the fire control technique represented the power of one's own spiritual power to attract the outside world, but this did not hinder his control over his own spiritual power. And these fire spiritual powers, which came out of the fire wing flying sword that he had completely refined, were actually his spiritual power. Therefore, he controlled these fire spiritual powers with absolute control and then made them engrave a perfect fire spirit array in his body. In this process, the fire spiritual power naturally continued to exert its power to burn his body that was not adapted to the fire attribute. But his body had long been extremely strengthened, and he frowned and supported this burning until that layer of the fire spirit array was completely formed. Even further, the spiritual furnace of the fire wing flying sword began to inject spiritual power. Another 5 days. Nanling surprisingly filled the 11th layer of the fire spirit array completely. It was incredible. He was at the 11th level of the foundation building, and the 11th level was a spirit array of another attribute. It seems that I have to start refining the Thunder Wing Scene Blade in advance. Nanling muttered to himself. He had already added a flower of fire to his spiritual formation system, so why not add a flower of thunder? Coincidentally, the 3-part return to Warijinki that the 3 people had painstakingly studied before could just be a theoretical supplement in this regard, as if it was destined. As for the water attribute that he inexplicably mastered, forget about that. His wind can be bad, but it can't be that bad, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 280. Preparations. The 11th level of foundation building. This is Nanling's current state after 10 days of retreat. I won't tell others about this kind of weird thing, so as not to scare everyone by this unconventional phenomenon. But Mo has been much gentler to him recently, because she has seen that Nanling now carries the Thunder Wing Scene blade wherever he goes. Speaking of which, her participation is indispensable in the design of this spiritual treasure. And in their design, when the Thunder Wing Scene blade is completed, it can also be unfolded behind Nanling, and together with the original Fire Wind Flying Sword, it forms two pairs of wings, one fire and one thunder, as gorgeous as a butterfly. Xiaonan, you came out of retreat. How is it? Mo immediately expressed his concern. Nanling replied, "Great, I think it won't be long before I can complete the foundation building, and then I can start to try to form a pill." Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said with relief, "That's good." The foundation building perfection she understood was the 10th level of foundation building, while Nanling's foundation building perfection was the 12th level of foundation building. Nanling's divine consciousness swept around and soon noticed that the Zhuoxia had moved. His consciousness connected with the bridge and he got some relevant information. That is, the super-large heavy fusion reactor they built as a base has been equipped with a propulsion device, and then it is slowly advancing in this rubble belt with a huge group of mayfly cannons. They are heading to the preset battlefield. In fact, the combat preparations have been almost done, which is much simpler than the game. Without the interference of the enemy, they spent a month to build up an amazing force. Anyway, according to Fanny, even if the Qiling fleet was ambushed unexpectedly, it would take a lot of effort to solve it. If the Qiling fleet is like this, it will be more stable to deal with the Death Star fleet. In this way, everything is ready, just waiting for the fleet of the Death Star pirates to arrive. However, there is still time left, so Nanling, as a behind-the-scenes mastermind, began to do some behind-the-scenes things. He first contacted his biological mother to confirm the information. Anyway, the intelligence fee has been paid a long time ago, which is considered after-sales service. Mrs. Rose was also very worried about Nanling's affairs. She asked, "Are you sure there is no problem? Why am I so worried? Why don't you just pay me 10 million to hire someone to do it? There are many powerful assassins who can help you kill the Black Death Emperor." Nanling was speechless for a while, and he said, "Aunt, don't mess around. We are going to use this opportunity to verify what we have learned." Madame Rose asked, "Verify what you have learned? What can you verify?" Nanling immediately asked Li Ji for a video and sent it to her. He smiled and said, "You will know after watching the video. This video is nothing, just a picture of the entire mobile base and the Mayfly artillery system during the march. In the dark starry sky, the dark mass quietly moved, like a terrifying thing lurking in the darkness, with an imposing manner." Soon Madame Rose replied, "What's the matter with this fleet? No, this is not a regular fleet, it is a special fleet. Where did you recruit it?" Nanling proudly showed off to his mother, "We made this ourselves, and completed it within these 50 days. Isn't it amazing?" Madame Rose was silent. Nanling continued to show off. "This is actually what we did in the Galaxy Immortal Guest, we just moved it to reality. By the way, Aunt Rose, why are you silent?" Madame Rose came back to her senses and said, "Nothing, but your high spirit suddenly reminded me of someone. I vaguely remember that he also introduced his achievements to me in such a high spirit." Nanling asked, "By the way, have you recovered your memories before the immortal boat of immortality?" Madame Rose said, "I recovered them. I went to the headquarters of Dai Ting and recovered them. Sure enough, I sealed my memories specifically in order to be an undercover agent on the Antarctic Changsheng." Nanling heard and said happily, "That's great." However, what he didn't expect was that Madame Rose said worriedly, "But the problem is that I found that this is not all my memories, even if the memories I recovered this time are from my childhood." Nanling was speechless. What's wrong with his biological mother? Can this memory be washed away by nesting dolls? He asked helplessly, "Are there any clues?" Madame Rose said frankly, Yes, I found that in my memory. I have been tirelessly seeking the opportunity to board the Antarctic Changshan from the beginning, even if I don't know what I can do on the board. I suspect that I still have memories left on the Antarctic Changshan. Nesting dolls, indeed, nesting dolls appeared. How can this thing be really fun? Madame Rose first went to search for the Changshan Xianzhao with him in order to retrieve the memories on the Antarctic Changshan, but after finding it, she found that the memory was incomplete, and she had to go to the headquarters of the listening organization to find the earlier memories. Now, all the previous memories are back, but she found that she still has memories left on the Antarctic Changshan. This is too much trouble. Nanling could only say, "Okay, anyway, we will go there again in the future." Madame Rose said, "No hurry, wait until we are all ready, and don't expect to completely discover all the secrets of the Xianzhao in one go." Nanling agreed that this really needs to be studied carefully. The mother and son talked for a while, and then Madame Rose sent a more accurate location of the Death Star pirates. So the conversation came to an end, and Madame Rose was completely relieved about the mobility of Nanling and his confidante. After Nanling sent the information to Li Ji, he contacted Ye Chen again and sent another piece of information. He said, "Uncle, this is the location of the Death Star pirates between the Ancient Domain and the Wind Domain. I would like to trouble you to arrange for someone to eliminate it in the near future." Ye Chen raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Are you going to take action against the Black Death Emperor? That is also a digital life. I'm afraid it cannot be completely eliminated." Nanling said frankly, "I naturally know this, so I will try my best to uproot its power. After all, since we are already enemies, we have to do it more thoroughly." Ye Chen said with approval, "I admire your mentality. Fanny only knows how to charge head-on. Although Mo is thorough, she can't be as ruthless and decisive as you in the details. I have done this, so it is a good opportunity for me to practice with the escort fleet of my new merchant group. But don't forget that the Death Star fleet started from the Star Federation. If you really want to eliminate their power, don't forget to sweep the Star Federation as well." Nanling immediately said, "Don't worry, I will take care of all these things." That's it. Chatting with Ye Chen is worry-free and labor-saving. He even feels that he and Ye Chen have very similar values. At this time, Ye Chen said again, "By the way, we have achieved considerable research results on King Xuanye. Let Li Ji contact us later and let her encrypt the channel to prevent information leakage." Nanling now knows how important a digital life can be. Even someone like Ye Chen has to rely on Li Ji in many ways. P.S. I have adapted well to the new job, although the work content has decreased a lot compared to before, and the responsibilities and affairs are also a lot heavier. According to today's status, I could have added more chapters, but the women at home all had a fever, so I had to give up and serve them. Chapter 281 Metamorphosis. Everything, whether it is carried out openly or secretly, is being advanced at full speed. The ghost disk on the Zhuoxia has even developed a more advanced application, creating a stealth force field covering a large area, which can hide the war machines built by the Zhuoxia people. And with the traces of space jump appearing on time in the intelligence of Mrs. Rose, everyone knows that the time for battle has come. Fanna smiled and invited everyone around. "Who will go with me to meet the Black Death Emperor?" Mo helplessly knocked Fanna's head lightly, without saying a word, but he had already made his attitude clear. This girl wants to be willful, and Mo, a follower, can only follow. Nanling was a little timid. He said, "I will calm you down on the ship." On the one hand, his cultivation is not enough, and on the other hand, he is really worried that his figure will appear in the prophecy of the oracle. The prophecy is so terrible, it is better to let the sturdy body of Boss Fanny take it, and he, a little fragile, should not show off. Fanny was a little surprised by this. She actually wanted Nanling to follow her. But Mo agreed with this. She said, "Xiaonan's cultivation is still a little bit lacking. If something unexpected happens, he will be in danger." Fanny was convinced. She thought for a while and said, "Okay, then Xiaonan, you have to turn up the special effects for me." Nanling patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, boss. You just need to be beautiful." At the same time, he winked at Mo, meaning you can't lose either. Mo rolled her eyes at him. She felt more and more that she was being scumbag. But she had no choice. After all, this was something she had contributed to. The Death Star fleet was ejected from the hyperspace voyaging echelons. Since they were hit by the burning cloud and lost their footing, they were obviously much more careful and had already possessed a good military quality. Sure enough, as a digital life, the Black Death Emperor could always easily achieve something as long as he wanted to. After these vanguard fleets gained a foothold, the follow-up ships of the Death Star fleet appeared one after another. They had been sailing for a long time, and the starship's shield was at a very low level. This was the easiest time to launch an attack, but the people on the Zhuoxia did not do so, and even calmly waited for the other side to recover. When the Chief Director Nanling saw that the other side's shield was almost recovered, he said with a hey, boss, System O, you can turn on your special effects devices, but remember to turn them on gradually, don't turn them on to the strongest level all at once. Fanny responded enthusiastically. Got it, watch our performance. Then, under the operation of the Chief Director, the special effects show began. In the dark void, a golden red light and a silver blue light suddenly appeared. They were two light sources that were not strong, but the radiation was very dense and penetrating, making it seem as if a bright golden red and silver blue light mist appeared in front of the Death Star fleet. The Black Death Emperor was watching this scene silently on his flagship, the Death Star. He asked solemnly, "Who is it?" Nanling got help from Fanny at this time. "Think of some lines for me quickly, it's urgent." He asked, "Aren't you prepared yourself?" This was really unexpected. After all, how could Fanny not be prepared for such a thing? Who knew that? Fanny said, "I suddenly feel that my lines are not good enough and not worthy at the special effects you have arranged, so you should think about it for me quickly." Nanling had no choice but to use his brain and edit a paragraph of text. Fanny took a look and immediately showed a heroic, proud and noble attitude and responded lightly, "I heard that you are looking for me." She was full of temperament, showing an unparalleled talent in this regard. While her voice was radiating the entire Death Star pirates fleet through the radio, Nanling also controlled her special effects module to change the brightness of the center of the golden red light group, so that her gorgeous and exquisite combat armor was reflected. It was amazing. She was clearly in the center of the light source, but Nanling had created some shadows for her to increase the three-dimensional sense. In short, at this moment, Fanny's figure was stunning, beautiful and domineering, and noble and gorgeous. At this time, Mo also received her lines in astonishment. She was stunned for a moment, and then she followed with some helplessness and laziness. Just killed her. The special effects unfolded again, and the graceful and elegant figure of Mo's armor was also revealed in the center of the light source. At the same time, because of her helpless voice, she added a touch of lazy mystery. At this time, Fanny's main color was golden red, which looked bright, gorgeous and noble. Behind her was a scorching golden ring, as if a solar corona was embedded behind her. Mo's main color was silver blue, which looked quiet, mysterious and elegant. Behind her was a silver wheel of Linyu slowly rotating, just like a fairy in the Moon Palace. Nanling's lines were very short, but in Fanny's heart, they seemed more powerful than the long speech she had prepared before. She liked this feeling of pretending too much. At this time, they actually didn't need to see the reaction of the Black Death Emperor, otherwise such a delay would make the high-profile status fall back. So behind the Sun and Moon twins, the hidden fleet showed its shape. Under the golden red and silver blue light, countless floating cannons were densely packed and staggered, and the deterrent power was fully pulled in the interweaving of light and shadow. Fanny laughed, and she added a line to herself. "Then destroy it." As the voice fell, a vast and burning wool emerged from her body, and then enveloped a piece of floating cannons. A vast and terrifying wool also emerged from Mo's body, covering another piece of floating cannons. They were not in a hurry to use the complete three-point return to origin cannon, but simply bombarded with cannons and thunder cannons. In their eyes, it seems that they have completely stopped taking the Death Star fleet seriously. Some things that they have experienced in the game are undergoing transformation in them. It wasn't just them. When Zhuoxia led an army built according to the model in Galaxy Fairy and appeared in front of the real fleet, some things in their hearts changed. Just like Nanlin, he suddenly didn't care about the battlefield anymore. He just looked down at his hands and had a very strange feeling. It seemed that even if he was alone, as long as he had enough materials, he could build a fleet alone. Just like Thongship, he found that the experience he had accumulated in Galaxy Fairy was actually effective. The blood and fire he had experienced in the game that he thought was virtual immediately underwent a qualitative change, and a taste of iron blood quietly appeared on him. Chapter 282. A groundbreaking combat system. The red and blue light beams were instantly fired, and the dense beams caused blanket damage to the Death Star fleet. The Death Star fleet had a total of 30 starships this time, including 5 large starships, 11 medium-sized starships, and the remaining 14 were small functional ships of various colors. To be honest, this was already very close to the standard fleet configuration of the regular army, and they also showed enough combat literacy at the first time of being attacked. All starships launched to counterattack. The main guns began to charge, and the secondary guns have hastily returned fire. But these floating guns led by the Euoxia were not a standard fleet at all. The Death Star fleet felt that they had undergone formal training, so how could they fall on this? Then they fell. They had never seen such a large-scale attack containing conceptual spiritual power, and they had never faced how powerful two Jindan cultivators with the strength to control the battlefield would be after having enough matching equipment. So a very shocking scene happened. The 14 functional ships were the first to bear the brunt, and their shields were not thick enough. Under the attack with conceptual power, the shields were torn apart in just a few hits. In doubt with the concept of attack, this is actually a high-level spell-level killing. The reason why cultivators were noble before was that they could rush into the starry sky alone to use high-level spells to tough out starships if they really couldn't do anything. But that was the most wasteful use, and no one would do it unless it was absolutely necessary. But now, Euoxia's side is equivalent to combining scientific and technological means with higher and deeper cultivation concepts, turning the high-level spells used at critical moments into normal attacks, which is fatal. Even the 11 medium-sized starships did not get any benefits. 3 medium-sized starships that were subjected to more intensive firepower were blown up on the spot, and the remaining 8 showed varying degrees of trauma. 2 of them exploded repeatedly, and it is unknown how long they can last. And the other 4 were hit repeatedly by the Thunder Spirit power carrying the concept of shock, which actually burned their central systems directly, making them silent on the spot. With this calculation, there are only 2 medium-sized starships with combat power left. And the 5 large battleships were not in a good situation either. Their shields suffered serious challenges, and they didn't know whether they could survive the next round in the storm. What about the damage caused by the counterattack of the Death Star fleet? Only 139 floating guns were blown up. Although the number reached 3 digits, the simple structure of the floating gun is destined to be a consumable. Even in Manling's opinion, this kind of floating gun can be fired once on the battlefield. It is already a payback. At this time, Mo said, "You come to, let's try the power of the Sunfen by Yuan cannon." Nanling nodded, and then appeared behind their 2 aunts. He was very low-key, and even used the special effects of the 2 to hide himself completely in the shadows. Although it seems a bit excessive to hide behind a woman, who can blame these 2 women for being so fierce? At this time, Li Ji's voice sounded. Invasion data was found, the attack power is extremely strong, and it is suspected that a digital life is in charge of the invasion. Nanling asked, "Can you resist it?" Li Ji said calmly, "No problem, we are all data life, he can't break through my firewall for a while. And I found that my computing power is not worse than his, maybe it's just that I have some disadvantages in experience. Li Ji's computing power always feels like it has been increasing, and I don't know why. However, in this way, the last shortcoming of Euoxia was completely made up. With Li Ji here, no one can use technical invasion to control them." At this time, countless floating guns began to combine 3 into 1 under the opponent's counterattack firepower. The opponent seemed to have a premonition of the bad situation. At the time, 5 large battleships almost simultaneously released their main guns to bombard Fanny and Mo's position. Compared with the main guns of the starship, Fanny and Mo's figures were very small. This was definitely anti-aircraft guns hitting mosquitoes. But there was no way, they were the most clear targets, otherwise they would use the main guns to bombard the floating gun group. What a joke, how many floating guns can be knocked down by this shot, and there are tens of thousands of floating guns on the scene. As for the places swept by the main guns, unfortunately, nothing was hit. Because how could this level of attack lock on 2 free Jindan monks? At this time, the floating guns had been assembled. Although they were constantly damaged under the opponent's attack, so what? It would be fine as long as there were enough of them. The assembled 3-point return to origin cannon has entered the activation phase. Fanu gave it the concept of burning, Mo gave it the concept of shock, and Nanlin, who was hiding in a corner, gave it the concept of tearing. Therefore, this 3-element attack immediately burst out with unimaginable killing. The attack that was originally given the concept was already beyond the conventional concept of this era, and now it is still the coordinated attack of 3 spiritual power concepts. In fact, strictly speaking, it is an attack that has surpassed 2 eras. Therefore, just a salvo, the 3-element damage of only 2 3-point return to origin cannons is enough to penetrate the shield of a large battleship. and as long as the third beam hits, it can tear open the armor of these battleships and directly damage them. Although the design structure of the large battleship itself is also very resistant to attack, it can even withstand 10 to 12 3-element attacks after breaking the shield. But this has already explained the problem. The battleship itself can withstand so many attacks because of its own size, and the shield it carries is only slightly stronger than a piece of paper under this epoch-making attack mode. We succeeded. We are very strong now. Nanling announced the victory of Zhuoxia team with a smile. They prepared for 2 months, and they were able to defeat an enemy of standard fleet level. This kind of thing is incredible. But they did it. This is not only the full use of the great power of the cultivators, but also that full use of the talents and wisdom of everyone. In order to achieve this step, they even threw away the original system and created a combat system that suits them best. What kind of spirit and talent is this? Others may be able to do it, but there is no doubt that they are the first to do so, and the first to apply these innovations in practice. At this time, the only thing left in the aggressive Death Star fleet was their flagship Death Star, and the mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor was in it. The Death Star was completely silent at this time, and it was riddled with holes, as if it had been bullied. Fanny paused for a moment and went forward. Mo held her back and said, "Don't go up. The Black Death Emperor is a digital life. It's too dangerous." Fanny said carelessly, "What are you afraid of? He is already a toothless tiger. I want to see how he can kill me now." Howell was very strong. Mo knew that he couldn't stop him, so he could only take the lead and fly towards the Death Star. Nanling naturally couldn't fall behind when he saw this. He hid behind his wife's figure in a completely invisible posture to prevent any accidents. He was not afraid of the Black Death Emperor, but he was actually very afraid of the oracle behind the Black Death Emperor. He didn't want to face this kind of existence so early. It would be better for him to develop for a while. It would be great to be invincible in the world and then beat everything. Isn't this plot fun? Unfortunately, Fanny didn't think so. She thought that if she could have fun, she would have to have fun on the spot. Chapter 283 Eliminate Information Pollution. Mo came to the bridge of the Death Star with a silver-blue lightning. She calmly looked at the rags in front of her, and then pointed without thinking. The next moment, the Lingyu silver wheel behind her flew out, and then cut a knife on the thickest armor on the entire Death Star like a surgical operation. A terrifying thing happened. The armor that was cut actually rolled outwards under the action of a strong magnetic field, and then like a rolled skin, its inside was completely revealed. Lingyu, I'm afraid it's really the sharpest knife in the world. Because just now, Mo completely used Lingyu's magnetic field to forcefully repel and separate the atoms in the superalloy steel plate. Even where the blade landed, where the magnetic field was the strongest and most condensed, even the nuclei were split apart. In short, this is a knife that can cut atoms. It's just that Mo can't fully control this kind of thing now. She didn't even realize what she did. She just knew that relying on Lingyu, she could easily cut through all alloy armor. Nanling was quite envious of this state of knowing the result but not the reason. He also wanted to be able to do it just by thinking about it. At this moment, he quietly disappeared into the shadow behind Mo, watching the scene on the bridge of the Death Star. There was only one figure on the bridge, the mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor that they had seen in the communication screen. Strictly speaking, the entire spaceship was another body of the Black Death Emperor, because there was no other life on the ship, only the Black Death Emperor alone. To be honest, they had just killed the strongest body of the Black Death Emperor in a muddle. In fact, they could imagine what kind of power of digital life could burst out when it completely controlled a starship. After all, Liji was such a digital life, and Liji could even control an extremely vast battlefield alone. Their estimate of the Black Death Emperor was based on Liji's, and then amplified it. Facing the mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor, Mo raised his chin slightly with cold pride, and then cast a magnetic field without saying a word to control it completely. Digital life is powerful on the internet and at the information level, but in reality they're ultimately no match for cultivators who attribute great power to themselves. Fanny also came here at this time. She said proudly to the burly mechanical body below, "Did you foresee this posture now?" The Black Death Emperor said nothing, as if he had frozen. At this time, Liji's voice sounded. "He has left, just when our first wave of offensive ended. I felt a small stream of information sent out from the Death Star at the time. Now I think it should be his core program." Fanny curled her lips in boredom and said, "Can the system of the Death Star be hacked?" Liji said, "Of course it can." But Nanling immediately stopped her and said, "No, I don't recommend doing this. Fanny asked in confusion. Why, wouldn't it be better if we can get information from the Death Star? Mo had already pointed at Nanling and said, have you forgotten how Xion destroyed the entire Chuxing network? Fanny suddenly realized and hurriedly said, that's right, this can't be ignored. Nanling complained at the time. How did I destroy the Chuxing network? I didn't do anything. They wanted to steal the information in my intelligence core themselves. He has long been accustomed to not storing any valuable information in his intelligence core. Valuable things are either kept in his mind or stored with Li Ji. And his intelligence core has actually become a data virus culture dish. Mo smiled and said, yes, you are the most innocent. The feeling of doting was beyond words. Nanling felt that it was a little subtle, and he quickly changed the subject and said, in fact, there is another reason why I don't recommend obtaining this ship, especially the information in this mechanical body. Even if it didn't leave any traps for us, what if it left some mysterious information, or simply left some information from the Oracle? Fanny was stunned by what he said. Mo thought for a moment and sighed, you're right. If this kind of information really falls into our hands, it will make it very difficult for us. It's better not to know anything. We can still do what we want without being interfered with by the will of those big guys. Fanny took a deep breath and nodded heavily and said, indeed, my father once told me that when we are weak, we should avoid intersection with the big guys as much as possible, because the realm of those great people is not something we can understand. Once we have intersection in any form, perhaps we have fallen into his calculations. I don't like this feeling. Eudoxia, charge the main gun and get ready to blow up here. She was very straightforward. Just as she asked the two to turn around and leave, the Black Death Emperor, who seemed to have crashed, suddenly spoke. Don't you want to know your fate? Fanny was stunned and asked, isn't he gone? Li Ji said, it should be an intelligent mechanism left by him, it's very simple. Fanny understood, and said coldly to the mechanical body that spoke, I don't want to know, I only know that you are my enemy, and I will do my best to destroy you. After saying that, he turned around and left, not interested in what the Black Death Emperor wanted to say. They returned to the burning cloud. Then the burning cloud's main gun bombarded and blew up the Death Star on the spot. Fanny acted very straightforward after knowing the good and the bad. However, during the explosion, Li Ji said in astonishment, there is a problem with the explosion pulse, and there seems to be encrypted information. Fanny said quickly, shield everything, don't receive any information from the Death Star in any form. Li Ji's psychic prosthesis nodded and said, okay, just turn on the ghost disk force field to erase this information. The burning cloud immediately did so. Then Li Ji said, some abnormal information has been detected in the floater system, which has not yet been extracted. Fanny said, we are all leaving anyway, so let's activate the self-destruction program for all these floaters. Li Ji said, okay, then ignore the information that the mobile base is being automatically loaded, right? Fanny waved her hand and said, let's blow them up together. We can make the kind of thing ourselves. At her signal, everything that might be related to the Black Death Emperor was destroyed, and she refused to come into contact with any information from the Black Death Emperor. It was as if the information from the Black Death Emperor was a kind of evil pollution, and knowing it would change some things about her. Nanling thought this approach was correct, and he said, at least wait until you reach the nascent soul stage. He knew that Fanny was actually unwilling to accept this. Fanny nodded, took a long breath and said, I just hope that life can be simpler and happier. I don't want to be involved in the plans of the big guys. P.S. I feel like I'm almost dying. Chapter 284. Can't stop seeking death. In a brilliant fireworks display, the war force that Eudoxia and his people spent 2 months to build all turned into interstellar dust. Although these things will become meaningless after they leave, it is really willful to destroy them directly. But who makes them have the qualifications to be willful? After this time, everyone's understanding of themselves has undergone earth-shaking changes. They have become more confident, and at the same time, they have a more severed feeling towards the entire human civilization. Because of this success, they realized that they can build a great foundation from scratch anytime and anywhere just by relying on their own strength. Scientific knowledge and cultivation knowledge intersect at this time, bursting out the confidence that they are now full of wisdom. But compared to Fanny's ignorance of the world, Mo began to sort out the defects of the system he established. She said, in fact, our system is not strong. Strictly speaking, this system was developed for the special environment of Galaxy Xiang. It does not have enough mobility and even lacks protection. In fact, compared to that, it is more like a guard system that is too large and complex. Nanling was doing the same thing. He said, "That is to say, we have accurate intelligence this time and waited for the Death Star fleet. Otherwise, if it is a normal space battle, their fleet only needs to bombard with main guns from a distance, which is enough to destroy all our preparations outside the range. The defects of this system are also obvious. The most obvious one is that it is strong in attack but weak in defense, and the range is not far. After all, if the distance is too far, the dissipation of spiritual power is inevitable, and its lethality is naturally greatly reduced." Fanny wondered, "Can't you two stop throwing cold water on me at this time? Okay, I know our system still has many flaws, and if someone is well prepared, there are many ways to deal with it." Nanling saw that she was unhappy, so she smiled and said, "Actually, what I want to say is that our Juoxia may be able to upgrade its weapon system again." Fanny was stunned for a moment, and then her eyes lit up. Mo also smiled when she heard this. Yes, if the ternary system is carried on the Juoxia, then all the shortcomings will not be considered shortcomings. Mo's mobility, defense, and abnormal resistance can all be borne by the Juoxia. The ternary system is an advanced and powerful weapon system. Fanny immediately said, "Well, let's enter the next stage of hyperspace navigation first, take this opportunity to accumulate technology, and wait until the fourth and last rest period to modify the weapon system of the spacecraft." Everyone had no objection to this, and they started hyperspace flight again with full of longing. They returned to the game space of Galaxy Fairy. This time, they really took this game seriously, because many experiences in this game can be transformed into real-life experience. Last time, they defended for 150 game days without any results. This time, they began to try to push the defense line to see if they could destroy the locust nest in the star map. This time, they had a harder time, because pushing the defense line meant shaking their original formation. It was always particularly difficult to change from static to dynamic. But after 2 failures, they entered the rhythm of success. Thongchip played a huge role at this time. He had unique experience in the formation arrangement. The entire huge formation was able to maintain a dynamic order under the cooperation of him and Li Ji. With Fanny's overall command and Mo and Nanling's central support, the entire compact formation was finally able to advance and operate smoothly. They patiently spent a whole month, that is, 300 game days, to push the entire asteroid belt once, and then stopped speechlessly in front of a black hole that kept drilling locusts out. So, this game doesn't want people to win at all. Fanny was so angry that she felt that all her time and energy were wasted. Everyone didn't think that their efforts were wasted, but when they were full of expectations and thought they could pass the game, they suddenly encountered such a thing, which made them feel unhappy. So they now treated the Galaxy Fairy with contempt. After all, the game was not finished yet and they were giving it to them. Isn't this just a joke? The fourth rest period began, and this time they spent another month. The main thing was to upgrade the weapon system of the Juoxia again, and transform the main gun and secondary gun of this ship into a 3-element system. Fanny, Mo, Nanling and Thongchip can each control the corresponding attributes of the ship's guns and bless them with conceptual spiritual power. When needed, Fanny, Mo and Nanling can also 3-point return to the origin, exerting nearly 10 times the lethality. The main guns of the Juoxia were all changed to 3-point return to the origin gun. The power was full, and the increase in size also solved the problem of range. The only downside was that it required 3 people to work together to support and display it, and Nanling became the one who dragged his feet. But they didn't have to fight now, and he didn't care. Then it was the last stage of the voyage, and this stage of the voyage was full of boredom. The crowd did not continue the collective activities. Fanny pulled Mo to do something unknown. Nanling did not even sink into the digital world again, but opened his eyes in the hyperspace with some curiosity and temptation. At this moment, the 3 elements of spirit, energy and spirit in his body were more closely connected, which made his active thinking also promote the thawing of his body in the hyperspace. He began to do one thing, which was to wake up his body in the hyperspace little by little. At the same time, he also tried to perceive the hyperspace with his divine thoughts. This was something he had never tried before. He now felt more and more that as a cultivator, he should use his divine thoughts to perceive the world. Then he fainted. There was no way, the amount of information in the hyperspace was too much. The endless, twisted, and incomprehensible information filled the entire space, which was much more complex than the information he could perceive simply by seeing, hearing, and smelling. So naturally his brain was burning with energy. If he hadn't strengthened his brain would probably be edible by now. He was overwhelmed by the complex information. That was good, so he wouldn't be bored in the hyperspace voyage. The only bad thing was that when he woke up dazed, he had to face the cold-faced Mo. "You messed around again," Mo said coldly, and turned his head to ignore him. Nanling knew at a glance that this was telling him, "I'm angry, come and comfort me." He rubbed his still aching head helplessly, and suddenly made a move to try to get up. However, when he stood up, his feet suddenly softened and he fell forward. Mo quickly turned around and hugged him in his arms, with an angry and worried expression. "Be careful," she said helplessly, and her decision to ignore Nanling changed on the spot. Nanling smiled and said, "But my sister is angry, and I'm anxious." Seeing this, Mo felt helpless. "Forget it, I can't do anything about you. You two are always worrying me. What bad luck did I have in my last life?" She still held Nanling in her arms and carefully helped him sit down. Of course, the other person she complained about was Fanny. She felt that Fanny and Nanling were simply her nemesis. However, with Nanling's death this time, they had already reached the range of the Star Federation. They arrived. Chapter 285 Suffering from Misunderstanding. The headquarters of the Star Federation is called the Star Special Zone. As for why it is called the Special Zone, when Nanling checked the information of the Star Special Zone, he found that there was no star here, or that there used to be a star system here, but it is gone now. This is the galaxy where mankind once originated, the solar system in the records, and the place where all legends and myths appeared. But it is gone, killed by the crazy internal circulation of mankind. When mankind suffered heavy losses in the war with the Hades locust and the economy withered, this former political, economic and cultural center launched a protracted warlord melee. Its iconic note is that the yellow dwarf star named the Sun was completely detonated by a dying warlord, and the entire solar system was therefore caught in a terrifying storm of stellar matter. The 4 rocky planets were shattered on the spot, and even the gaseous planets were damaged, and then they left their original orbits and drifted into the dark deep space. The entire planetary system was destroyed, leaving only countless cosmic dust. The Star Special Zone was established at the original location of the solar system. This is a kind of remembrance and continuation. But when the solar system was destroyed, the division of the former Human Federation was already unstoppable. Nanling said, "Shall we go directly to the Starry Special Zone?" In fact, everyone had no idea about the Starry Federation, and had no plan for where to go. Fanny said, "Although the Starry Federation is composed of 7 star regions, I think those star regions are not better than the ancient domain. It is better to come to the Starry Special Zone to stroll around and remember the place where we originated." Nanling nodded silently after hearing this, which touched his heart. At this time, the Starry Special Zone did not show any signs of stars in the detection display of the Zooxia, but there were bright spots everywhere, just like a starry land. That was the light of the space station. Humans finally filled this star region that should have been empty with scientific and technological power, making it prosperous again. When they approached this special zone, the bridge received AI communication. "Dear visitors from the ancient domain, your entry request has been reviewed. You can choose to go through the God King channel or the Abundant channel. At present, the queues for these 2 channels are relatively relaxed." Nanling has quickly checked the information of these 2 channels. Later, he learned that the 4 gaseous planets that had been scattered and separated had actually been captured and brought back. Now, they were fixed to the periphery of the Starry Special Zone with superior gravity technology as a fortress. Fanny had already said, "Let's take the Plenty channel. I heard that the God King planet was only half of its size in the solar explosion, while the Plenty planet was still intact." Zooxia adjusted its course and continued to sail. Soon, they came to a queue. There were spaceships lined up in front and behind, and signal cursors on both sides to define the channel. "It looks like we have to wait in a long queue. It's really boring. Mo, Sister Liji, let's go to the online community here." Fanny quickly thought of an activity. But Liji suddenly said in a solemn voice, "No, Fanny, you should take a look at the inspection items here first." Fanny was stunned for a moment. Liji had already projected the relevant content on the bridge, and the key parts were marked separately. Nanling was also stunned at a glance. There was nothing else, but there was one item that was very cautious. Load a digital lock on the weapon system. Once the digital lock is loaded, it means that the weapon system of Zooxia has fallen into the control of others. At least in the Star Special Zone, this weapon system can no longer be used. The principle of this digital lock is also very frustrating. It uses the maze lock program to throw the fire control instructions of the weapon system into the logical vortex. Under the digital lock, the bridge can still give orders to the fire control system, but the weapons on the ship will never really receive this order. Fanna hesitated for a while, and she said, "Do we need to use the fire control system to operate the weapons of Zooxia?" Lygia was even more entangled when she heard it. She said, "Generally speaking, it is used, but you have recently modified the weapon system, and it seems that you haven't made the fire control program yet." Nanling. He raised his hand to admit his mistake and said, "My fault, because I don't think there is any need for a fire control system." Fanna gave him a tacit look, and she said, "Yes, I also think that direct manual operation is more exciting." Mo felt a sense of powerlessness at the time. She never expected that these two people would actually play together like-mindedly. She was tired. Nanling didn't notice Moxon's tired look this time, and laughed. "In that case, let's write a fire control program for the digital lock, otherwise it might cause trouble to us if it has nothing to lock it." Fanna smiled and replied, "Yes, yes." It was as if they were playing a prank that no one else could expose. However, their prank failed to come true, because just as they were slowly lining up, the entire Fungrayo channel lit up with a dazzling red alarm. At the same time, the bridge of the Zooxia received a very severe warning. AI warning. Warning, a Class A dangerous factor has been discovered, please give up resistance and accept investigation immediately. All the members of the Zooxia were stunned at the time. How did they become a Class A dangerous factor? Then Lygia retrieved a wanted order, which had a photo on it. Zooxia covered half of the sky. Fanny was wearing a King Leon armor with a burning sun ring behind her, and under the underworld filter, both the ship and the people looked as bright red as blood, full of evil oppression. Fanny blinked innocently, then said, "This seems to be a picture of me in front of the Nago Palace. Is this a big deal?" Nanling nodded and said, "It seems that there is no problem with the Gu family, but other places will still be affected." Mo's face became more ugly, and she said, "I suggest that we evacuate immediately. We can't fall into the hands of the Star Federation as criminals. At least we have to negotiate with them first." Fanny nodded in agreement and said, "Okay, turn on the stealth mode." The Zooxia immediately cut off all contact with the other party's AI, and then turned on the ghost disk force field, and disappeared on the spot. No one has been able to crack this trick yet. After all, it uses the magical phenomenon caused by the dark matter wonder. They easily got rid of the detection and drove away quietly. If they can't afford to provoke, can they hide? They decided to hide in the nearby desolate galaxy for a while. There are countless stars in the Milky Way, and the Star Federation is not like the Wind region, which will start a full area scan at all costs, so they have many ways to hide. However, it didn't matter that they hid, the entire Star Federation fell out because of it. A spaceship marked as a Class A dangerous factor suddenly appeared in the core area of the Star Federation, was detected during the security check, and then it suddenly disappeared. What would normal people think? This ship must be here to cause trouble. The Star Special Zone is the most important area of the Star Federation. How could this be possible? Naturally, as many ships as possible would be dispatched, and martial laws imposed throughout the Star Special Zone. But what about the people on the Zooxia? They have found a cold and dark planet, where they docked and rested for their own amusement. In order to prevent being discovered by the Federation, they cut off all communications and will only consider other things after this storm has passed. But in this way, it will be difficult for the Federal soldiers who are looking for them everywhere. Chapter 286 Leisure Time. Nanling was quite leisurely. He was holding his Thunderwind blade on the deck and appreciating the snow. While patiently refining the spiritual treasure, he was impressed by the wonders of this planet. Even though it was a deserted planet that no one cared about, this planet was very beautiful, just like a world of ice crystals. The surroundings were covered with ice and snow, and the sky was a surging storm, and in the storm there was a terrifying thunder brewing. But under the thick and restless atmosphere, there was a calm. There was an icy ocean here, and countless snowflake-like crystals fell from the sky. These snowflakes were frozen compounds such as hydrogen, helium and methane, but this ocean was liquid methane. The surface temperature of this planet was between -130 and -90 degrees Celsius, which was very cold because it was too far away from the star. To be honest, this kind of planet is actually very suitable for replenishing energy, but it was ignored because the star system it was in was too barren. At the same time, because it was relatively close to the starry special zone, the looters could not be active here, so no one cared about it. The Zooxia was rising and falling in this ocean of methane, while Nanling was sitting on the deck and raising the ambient temperature to summer mode with great fun. He was wearing a short shirt and shorts, lying on the deck as if enjoying the beautiful scenery. But he felt as if something was missing, so a robot poured him a glass of sparkling water, and he personally used the cold wind technique to cool it down. Water control technique has reached LV6. The intelligence core gave him a reminder, which made him feel deeply helpless. He never thought that he would practice water control technique to LV6 just because he liked to add ice to drinks. But it seems that he also practiced wind control technique to max level because he liked to add air to drinks, so soda is his golden finger. But no matter what, it is really enjoyable to turn on the heating while enjoying the snow scene and drinking iced happy water. Fanny sat down next to him with a bang, picked up the cup he placed next to her and drank most of it, then wiped her mouth happily and said, "You still know how to enjoy it." Nanling glanced at her and said, "Boss, aren't you watching a drama? Why did you come out?" Fanny said, "I'm bored, okay? And, we're so familiar with each other, can't you stop calling me boss?" Nanling suddenly became alert. This woman has a conspiracy. He said, "No, I think the title of boss can reflect my respect for you, and I'm used to it." He knew that Fanny wanted to talk about feelings with him, but he was determined not to talk about feelings with the boss, because his experience in his previous life told him that when the boss talked about feelings with him, it was time for him to spend money. Fanny was blocked back and suddenly stopped talking. This was not like her character. According to her lawless appearance, Nanling was really afraid that she wanted to force a relationship with him. But she hesitated and backed down. Suddenly he looked up at the sky and said, "Where is Mo?" Nanling did not speak, but directly shared a perspective with her through the intelligence core. Fanny received the perspective, and then continued to magnify it, and finally saw a small black dot in the thick clouds that was entangled by thunder. "Do you really think Nanling is enjoying it here?" "He is enjoying it while looking at his wife." Fanny said with some envy and deep meaning, "You really don't want to take your eyes off Mo for a moment." Nanling said, "I'm still too weak, this is the only thing I can do now." Indeed, he really couldn't help much with Mo's perception. Fanny was silent for a moment, then said, "Mo is starting to have his own direction, what about me? Do I also need to find a magma planet to gain insights?" Nanling suddenly laughed and said, "How can it be so exaggerated? Just find a planet with volcanoes." In fact, the meaning of fire and thunder is not only in nature. Many of their concepts are originally given by living beings. For example, thunder, for ancient humans, it is the most majestic power of heaven. They believe that it is a punishment from heaven, and it is full of deterrence, intimidation and justice. You see that many advanced thunder techniques now quote such conceptual power. And the same is true for fire. It has both the fear and hatred of ancient humans for wildfires and fires, and the concepts of courage, protection and hope represented by it because it can illuminate, heat and cook. Fanny is also a smart woman. She quickly understood what Nanling said, but then he also led her in another direction. She asked, "According to what you said, isn't the concept of spiritual power not immutable?" Nanling was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect to provoke Fanny's question. He sighed and said, "This is also what I have been thinking about recently. How was the original concept of spiritual power given? Do they exist because of the existence of living beings? If that is the case, then when we have a high level of cultivation, can we make spiritual power evolve according to our consciousness?" He threw out a big topic in one breath. This topic shocked Fanny and also captured her mind. She asked in amazement, "Do you usually think about this kind of question? How can you think of such a place?" Nanling asked curiously, "Since we have taken the path of cultivation, then of course we have to explore the essence of cultivation. In fact, I don't know if what I think is correct. Maybe it can only be regarded as my personal understanding." This is also the reason why he shared his experience with the people around him so selflessly. He didn't know if his idea was correct, and he urgently needed to discuss, demonstrate, and experiment with others. Therefore, Mo and Fanny, the two golden elixir girls who walked in front, were really exemplary to him, and more importantly, they could share their cultivation feelings with him without hiding anything. Gyechen's attempt was another one. He really hoped to share his insights after Gyetchen broke through to the nascent soul stage. This would also allow him to get a glimpse of the situation and make some guesses and thoughts about the higher level path of cultivation. Fanny nodded and said, "Well, it's indeed too early for us. It's amazing that we can learn one concept well at this stage, not to mention that one kind of spiritual power contains many different or similar concepts." At this moment, she suddenly laughed and said, "I found that the masters of the Chugyu Academy are not as good as you. What they teach us is always how to use spiritual power, and they only regard spiritual power as a tool to strengthen ourselves. Unlike you, who is constantly digging for the true meaning of spiritual power. Nanling laughed dumbly when he heard it. The masters are right. Spiritual power is indeed just a tool. The most important thing is ourselves, what we can get from spiritual power and all things. He paused, stood up and walked to the front of the deck and said, the essence of practice is to return all that you have practiced to yourself. That feeling of self-fulfillment and satisfaction, I believe you have also experienced it, boss. Fanny was stunned for a moment and said, you mean, we put the knowledge in the game into practice in reality, this is also practice? Nanling said, that's natural. We have easily transformed the world with the knowledge and power we have mastered and achieved our goal. This is cultivation. At this time, a figure slowly descended from the thundercloud in the sky. Mo fell on the bow at the light of thunder wrapped around his body, looking radiant with divine light. Obviously, he had gained a lot from the perception just now. P.S. I survived for one day, but my daughters just happened to have a fever again, and my wife also had a high fever of 40. These days are really sad. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 287. That's not how things are discussed. Mo's practice came to an end for the time being, and she told Nanling all her insights without reservation. With this confirmation, Nanling finally understood some concepts of thunder. He understood the concept of swiftness. It was a relatively basic concept of thunder, but he didn't care. It was good to have such a concept. Seeing this, Fan and I was not to be outdone, and taught Nanling all her understanding of that concept of fire. She already knew that Nanling wanted such an exchange, so she was unreserved. Nanling also welcomed this, but it was a pity that Fan and I's own understanding of fire was still a little vague, and she couldn't describe the concept clearly. It was in such a discussion that another month passed. Hongji, who was listening obediently on the side, had already seized the opportunity to break through and reach the 10th level of foundation building. He felt that he was really like a student in front of these three people. Their wonderful ideas were so far away from him. He could only try to remember a few pieces, but he had benefited a lot. In this regard, he completely adjusted his mentality while feeling disappointed. He thought that the three big guys still needed a bag-carrying brother around them, right? Unexpectedly, in addition to Thongship, Li Ji was also listening with great interest. Her psychic prosthesis could also simply control spiritual power, but that was because of her excellent prosthesis. Li Ji was now trying to master spiritual power by listening to the experience sharing of the three people. It was unknown whether she could succeed, but everyone present was obviously happy to see it happen. There was really more and more of a sitting and discussing atmosphere on the Zhuoxia, which made Nanling very happy. He only hoped that this atmosphere could continue in the future. However, at this time, they suddenly received an interstellar broadcast from the Star Special Zone. Everyone on the Zhuoxia, please show up and talk, we need to resolve the misunderstanding. On the bridge of the Zhuoxia, everyone arrived one after another, and then listened to the broadcast in the daze. Fanny muttered, did I forget what serious things we did? Nanling shook her head and said, we just arrived at the Plenty Channel, applied for entry, and were warned by them with force, so we quickly ran away. Mo crossed his arms and said calmly, anyway, we will connect to the communication after the Zhuoxia takes off, and be prepared to escape into hyperspace at any time. If they want to talk, then we can talk. Sister Li Ji, pay attention to intelligence collection. Li Ji said cheerfully, that's natural. In fact, I think you can relax a little. I guess they are the ones who were nervous now. As the Zhuoxia took off and reached a certain height, the communication could be connected. Fanny waved her hand in annoyance, indicating that she was too lazy to talk nonsense with strangers. Mo could only sigh and step forward. This is the Zhuoxia. May I ask what you can do with us? Her tone was cold, as if there were many stories between the two sides. The other side responded calmly. This is a lie, the commander of the Elk Fleet, the rotating escort fleet of the Starry Special Zone. What is your name? Mo's eyes drifted to the side, and Nanling immediately said in a deep voice with great tacit understanding. First mate, we found that the other fleet is gathering here, but it has not yet made an attacking gesture. A barely detectable smile appeared on the corner of Mo's mouth. She was happy about the tacit understanding between herself and Nanling. Then she faced Li coldly and said, I'm Guillermo, the first mate of Zooxia. If you have anything to say, just tell me. I also asked coldly. Excuse me, why did your ship flee before 1 month? Mo said lightly. Because you showed the intention to attack this ship, just for self-protection. Just like now, if your main guns start to charge, this ship will immediately get rid of it and leave. This sentence seemed like a response, but in fact it was telling the other party that Zooxia could leave at any time, and don't make those nonsense arguments. Lulai really understood, and he said, your ship has misunderstood. We just want you to explain what happened in the Nego space. Mo looked at Lulai calmly. When Nanling thought she would respond seriously, she suddenly said, I thought the captain of our ship, Miss Gifani, refused to appear in front of you, and her attitude was very clear. We don't need to explain what happened in the Nego space station. With the intelligence capabilities of the Star Federation, we can naturally know what happened there. If you want to charge us with a crime, just say it directly. No matter what you charge us with, we have no objection, but the question is, do you have the courage? Mo's words suddenly became aggressive, which was completely contrary to the gentle and caring image of the big sister in Nanling's impression. But what should he do if such a cold and arrogant look hurts him even more? Lulai was speechless for a moment. He seemed to have a breath stuck in his chest that he couldn't express. But he finally gave in and said, I don't want to argue with you. Mo said, I don't want to argue with you either, so can't we make things simpler? Just tell us the solution, and we'll judge whether it works or not. It's that simple. Lulai paused at that moment. He found that he had obviously thought things were simple. The ladies of the Zooxia were unexpectedly tough. What made him even more uncomfortable was that this toughness did not actually touch their bottom line. It can even be said that the Zooxia itself did not touch the interests of the Star Federation at all. It was just that some people wanted to act like a boss and support the Nego royal family. Of course, the premise of support is that the object is soft enough, but if the object is also tough, then the gain will outweigh the loss. While Lulai was hesitating, fortunately, another person joined the communication. Misunderstanding, this is a misunderstanding. Zooxia is my honored guest. General Lu, please show some mercy. Mo looked at the person who spoke with some surprise, and then recognized that it was Fuzzy, the director of Galaxy Fairy Guest Operations in the Ancient Domain. At this time, Mo had already noticed and looked to their side, and Fanny really stood up. She nodded gently and said, Hello, Mr. Fuzzy, Miss Fanny is still thinking about you. Then she made way. Then Fanny replaced Mo and said to Fox angrily, Fox, you said you would play a game for me, but what kind of crap a game did you play for me? Fox smiled implicitly and said, Galaxy Fairy's Hades Locust disaster mode is indeed a bit difficult. As long as the lady can persist under the attack of the Hades Locusts. Before he finished speaking, Fanny said unhappily, Still persisting? I pushed all the way to the Hades Locust nest, but I found that there was not a single building in the nest. All the Hades Locusts came out of a black hole. Are you sincere in not wanting others to win, or is this game just a semi-finished product? How dare you use a semi-finished product? Fox fell silent all of a sudden. He didn't know what happened and didn't say a word, but his eyes got bigger and bigger. Chapter 288. Seems like I'm lucky. Fox's expression was very interesting, as if he had seen something absurd. Lulai was completely confused. How could they talk about games when they were supposed to be talking about business? He didn't dare to interfere with Fox's affairs, because Fox was a guest of honor of the Star Federation, or in other words, the Xincan pioneer he represented was a member of the Lu family behind Lulai, and even the Lu family dared not offend him. Fox came back to his senses and asked excitedly, Are you serious? Fanny didn't say anything and directly sent a recorded video and said, I knew you were going to cheat. I recorded the scene at the time. This is a bug. Don't be careless. Fox was only concerned with receiving the video. After a while, he suddenly asked, Can I read your game information? This is very important to us. Fanny was about to agree. As a result, Nanling thought of something, and he suddenly whispered, You can't agree like this. He knew that Fanny was about to agree, so he spoke hastily. Fanny was stunned for a moment, she didn't understand. Nanling knew that since he had spoken out, he said to Fanny in a low voice that sounded like a mastermind. This game is not just a game. There are too many technologies we have developed for this in our game data. Fox understood immediately after hearing this, and said, Don't worry, we will apply for patents for all the new technologies in the data. Please believe in the reputation of our Galaxy Fairy guest, and more importantly, the reputation of Xincan pioneer behind me. Nanling stopped talking. As a subordinate, he had already reminded everyone what he should remind. Next was the decision that Fanny, the captain, should make. Fanny nodded to him and said, "Okay, I promise you." As soon as the voice fell, the channels of the two sides were connected, and the data began to be transmitted. At the same time, Fox had obviously begun to analyze it. Just 1 minute later, he said excitedly, "General Lulai, everyone on the Zhuoxia is an important guest of the Galaxy Fairy guest. Please don't worry too much. I will personally apologize later." Lulai realized that the matter might be serious. He hurriedly said, "No, it's just a misunderstanding. Since the misunderstanding has been resolved, it's the best." "Why do you need Mr. Fast to apologize?" Then, Li Ji said lightly, "This elf fleet has unlocked the lock and lifted the offensive posture." Fanny nodded with satisfaction. General Lulai is very flexible. At this time, Fast looked up with a complicated expression and said, "We found many technological and magic innovations in the game data. May I ask who should register the copyright of these innovative technologies and spells?" He could register all of them under Fanny's name, but he had realized that Fanny was only the leader of this team, so he asked a question. Fanny was stunned for a moment, then said, "Then let's register them all under the name of the company Fanolin." Fox nodded in understanding and said, "That's best." A moment later, Li Ji said, "The registration information is in place, and by the way, the company Fanolin we registered has also received the first batch of authorization applications." Fanny took a look and asked, "Are you applying for our authorization?" Fox nodded and said, "Yes, we must verify the feasibility, this is too important. In addition, I'm afraid we will also conduct large-scale trials and applications of the technology you use. Galaxy Fairy will not let those who have made contributions suffer. I have 3 cooperation models here. I don't know which one you want." Lulai was very perceptive. Seeing this, he immediately said, "You two can discuss it." Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, the Starry Special Zone welcomes everyone from the Zhuoxia to visit at any time. At the time, you can just go through the inspection-free channel, and there will be no more trouble. As he said that, he left the communication. He already knew that it was not suitable for him to continue contacting it. As expected, his departure did not attract anyone's attention. People like Fox, who worked for Xingcan Pioneer, would not care about such a small figure of the Lu family. He just said, "There are no outsiders here now. Miss Fanny can ask your friends to participate in the discussion." Fox was referring to Mo and Nanling. He knew that these two people could be said to be Fanny's right-hand men. But Fanny waved her hand and pulled Thongxi and Li Jian, and said that they could all participate in the discussion. In terms of winning people's hearts, this young lady has always been instinctively excellent. Mo had already seen the authorization application, and then said very calmly, "I have seen your authorization application. One of the clauses is to pay us 1 billion spiritual bar points every year to obtain the current full set of technical authorizations of Fanolim. The other one is more subdivided. Generally speaking, every time a product containing our authorized technology is offline, we can get an income. 1 billion annual fees, this is not a small amount." But everyone present had seen the world and knew that if their technology was really useful and there were big forces willing to invest in production, then choosing the second landing fee might earn more every year. Fanny asked, "Didn't you say there were 3 ways to cooperate? What's the other one?" Fox said, "There's another one, which is that we use 25% of the equity income of Galaxy Fairy to exchange for the technology and magic authorization of Fanolin Company. These 3 ways of cooperation have their own advantages and disadvantages. Please listen to my analysis for you." Fanny frowned at the time, and there was obviously an impatient look between her eyebrows. Nan Lin, as the lackey and the man behind that boss, reacted immediately and took the lead in giving a message in the private group chat. "I suggest that we just cooperate according to the annual fee." Mo was slightly puzzled, and she said, "According to my analysis, it is definitely the best to get the equity income of Galaxy Fairy at present, but it is difficult to guarantee how long this kind of game will be popular, so I suggest that it is in our best interest to charge a landing fee." When Nanling saw Mo speak, he immediately stopped talking and expressed his obedience, which made Mo feel very satisfied. However, Fanny continued to frown and said, "But this is too troublesome. I still think Xionan's suggestion is better. We should just pay them, and then it will be easier if we don't interfere with each other." Mo looked at Nanling unhappily, because she knew that Nanling was the vanguard for Fanny again this time. Nanling felt a little aggrieved. He was just throwing out a brick to attract Jade and expressing the boss's meaning. Redstone does not participate in discussions on such matters. And Liji, the fourth shareholder of Fanmolin, hesitated and said, with my computing power, I can do whatever you choose. Fan hesitated again. Liji's technical guarantee was so good that it seemed that many things that were originally troublesome could become no longer troublesome. But this time Nanling clearly expressed her meaning. No, let's choose the annual fee. Sister Liji, I think even if you become a digital life, you can't really regard yourself as an AI serving us. Liji was stunned, and at the same time she was really moved. Mo said calmly, since Shionan suggested that we choose the annual fee, what do you think? She glanced at Nanlin, and suddenly smiled dotingly and said, I have no opinion anyway. Fana certainly had no opinion either. Thongchip did not express any opinion, and Liji also abstained. So, it was equivalent to Nanling's proposal being passed. Nanling looked at Mo in astonishment, and felt some strange changes in his heart. Mo smiled and said, if you have any ideas, you can just say them directly. There is no need to express them in the name of others. After all, we are all family. Nanling didn't know what to say for a moment, and Fanny was also speechless and blushed a little, because she noticed that Mo's family seemed to include her as well. However, Nanling still showed an uncomfortable look, and he obviously couldn't react to this situation. Chapter 289. Hard favor. Charging an annual fee is definitely the easiest way to authorize, but of course the benefits will be much less. Fox was surprised by this and asked, is it really okay to just charge an annual fee? Fanny said frankly, that's fine, and 1 billion is not a small amount. Nanling thought about it and suddenly edited a text and sent it to Fanny. Fanny paused for a moment, then said in a gentle tone, in fact, we can roughly guess from this game what efforts Mr. Fox and the people behind you are making. We won't be so noble as to give away our own interests, but we will never haggle over small profits. Let's leave it at that. In fact, I hope our invention can bring you more creativity. Fox was quite moved when he heard this, and he said, Miss, you are so righteous. I wonder if you would be willing to talk to my master. The achievements of everyone on the Zooxia are actually enough to make my master look at you differently. Fanny hurriedly shook her head and said, no need, it's too early for us to contact the Star Pioneer now. I just want to continue to live freely. Fox nodded repeatedly when he heard this, and he also felt that this was better. Then he thought of something and said, since Miss Fanny is so kind, I have a copy of the Nascent Soul Experience here and I will give it to you. I hope it will be helpful to Master Gichen. Fanny was slightly stunned when she heard this. She said, no need, I said it's useless to my father. Fox. ... He really thought that the so-called no need was just the ignorant words of this young lady, but now it seems that they really don't need it. However, at this time, Nanling coughed again. Fanny looked over curiously and said, you need it. I never doubted that you could cultivate to the nascent soul stage. Do you also need this kind of thing? Nanling said helplessly, a good lesson can be learned from others. This kind of nascent soul experience is always precious experience of predecessors. It is always good to refer to it when you have the chance. Fanny thought it made sense, so she nodded and said, okay, we will take this nascent soul experience. Thank you, Lord Fox, for the gift. Fox gladly handed over a copy of the information, and then said, by the way, the final round of the Galaxy Fairy Guest will be opened in a few days. Can I invite you to be special guests to attend and provide guidance? Fanny asked uncertainly, we as guests. But we didn't make it to the final round. Fox laughed and said, what does it matter? We made this game and set up high rewards just to find a team that can survive 40 game days in the plague of low costs. He looked at Fanny with a smile, and that expression was very meaningful. Then seeing that Fanny seemed confused, he said, Miss Fanny, it's not that there is a problem with our game, but we only set the ultimate goal of being able to last for 40 game days from the beginning. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to everyone on the Zooxia, you have already cleared our game. Fanny blinked and said, no wonder no more powerful variants of the Nether Locust appeared since the 38th day. It turns out that we cleared the game in 40 days. Then why don't you put a reminder in the game? Do you know how depressed we felt when we fought for 150 consecutive game days but still couldn't clear the game? Fox heard this and said, Miss Fanny is right. This is a negligence. The main reason is that we didn't expect that someone could hold on to more than 40 game days so early. Fanny thought for a while and said, forget about the guests. I have no interest in this game now. Fox said, then if we need it, can we ask everyone on the Zooxia for some advice? After all, we hope that this is a success that can be replicated. Fanny agreed indifferently after hearing this. After that, they had another friendly conversation. The two sides signed the authorization agreement at a rapid speed and entered the communication. Li Ji said with emotion, "There is indeed an extra 1 billion in our Fan Holdings account. This money is too easy to make." Fan and I said indifferently, "What's the big deal? It takes 30 years to buy a Zhuoxia." Mo pondered for a moment and said, "From the importance that Fox attaches to our game records, are they really preparing for the future invasion of the Nether Locusts? I'm just a little curious, where did they get the information about so many mutant individuals of the Nether Locusts, as if they raised a whole group of Nether Locusts for observation?" Nanling said, "That's not what we should care about. Let's think about what to do now." Fan and I was also at a loss. Yes, what did they come all the way to the Star Federation for? Yes, they came to join in the fun. But with her short-lived personality, she doesn't think so now, Li Ji said again at this time. "I think, should we go to the Starry Special Zone to take over our industry?" Fanny asked in astonishment. "What industry do we have?" Li Ji said, "Our application to set up a company has not been approved before because we did not purchase real estate in advance. Didn't we plan to buy real estate and open a company after we got here? Now it's all right, Mr. Fox has solved all these things for us." Mo also saw the relevant information, and she said in surprise, "He just gave us an office building." Nanling was also very surprised by this. He saw the 33-story building in the best location in the Starry Special Zone, and asked quickly, "Sister Li Ji, how much is this building selling for?" Li Ji has already reported the result. If it is sold according to the market price, this building can be sold for between 800 million and 1 billion. This is a big deal. Mo shook his head and sighed. This Mr. Fox is really good at giving favors. He knows that if this kind of gift is given out in the open, we won't take it too seriously. But if it is given out quietly and we find it ourselves, the situation will be different. Fanny also sighed. Indeed, he has solved a big problem for us. I must accept his favor for this. It's not easy. Even Fanny has to remember his favor. Nanling didn't care about the favor. He only cared about the property. So he said, "Okay, there'll always be a time to repay this kind of favor. Won't they still ask us for help? Then are we going back to the Star Special Zone now?" Fanny said readily, "Then let's go. There is nothing to do for the time being, so it's not bad to go and inspect your own property." So the Zhuoxia set sail again. It was still the fertile channel. This time they didn't queue up again, but were directly guided to a VIP channel. The Zhuoxia almost flew past the huge halo of the fertile star. Nanling was stunned by the porthole. Mo asked gently beside him, "What's wrong?" Nanling shook his head and just said, "I didn't expect the harvest planet to be like this. Was it called this from the beginning?" Mo shook his head and said, "I just heard that its original name was the god symbolizing abundance and agriculture in ancient human mythology, but the name of this god has been lost, so it is called this now." Nanling felt a little uncomfortable, because in his eyes this was clearly Saturn. Chapter 290 Jumton Space Station, the Starry Zone. If there were no space stations that were almost connected to each other, this would be a dark star field with nothing in it. The Zhuoxia shuttled through it, and there were huge artificial celestial bodies passing by, which made it feel crowded and cramped. But we have to admit that this can really be said to be the place where human technology has been accomplished, and it is also the central birthplace of human civilization. Of course, it is impossible to fill this star field with artificial machinery, but it is crowded because of the busy traffic and logistics here. The Zhuoxia arrived at a huge space station composed of 3 huge disc-shaped residential areas. This space station is the most prosperous political and economic center among the 9 space stations in the Starry Zone, and it can be said to be the core of the core. In terms of volume, each of its disc-shaped residential areas can be compared with the Chunyuan 06 that Nanling was familiar with. And these 3 residential areas of the same size are connected by multiple corridors to form the Jumton Space Station. The Zhuoxia was not allowed to dock directly on the space station. After all, the ship's criminal record is quite serious. But there are many supporting airports around, and Zhuoxia was settled in one of them. And the airport has a space tunnel connecting to Jumton Space Station. After getting off Zhuoxia, they went to Jumton Space Station along this tunnel. It's a pity that we can't fly here by ourselves. Nanling sighed helplessly. Mo said, "There's nothing we can do about it. Who would have thought that the supergravity field in this Starry Special Zone would be directly opened to prevent all forms of flight? Fanna suddenly jumped on the spot, and her pair of perfect rice bowls naturally jumped violently, which was really eye-catching. Nanling couldn't help but straighten his eyes. This made Mo feel a little hurt and looked down at her chest. But she didn't feel anything. After her rice bowl was enlarged once, it was just the right size. Fanna said nonchalantly, "It seems that there is no problem jumping up. I don't know what logic there is in their no-fly ban." Nanling sensed it with his mind, and then said, "I sense the spiritual power shielding. There is no spiritual power in the upper air." Mo also said, "There is also a strong electromagnetic barrier that can interfere with the operation of all aircraft, unless there is a secret key." Li Ji was wearing a rather loose dress at this time, covering all the crystals on her body that could store spiritual power. She said, "I also feel that there are people at the same level as me who maintain the network security of this space station. It's really well defended." Everyone was quite moved when they heard this. The protection measures of this Juntan space station are simply full. It seems that they can only abide by the law like ordinary people here. But fortunately, they didn't have the intention to make trouble. After a long journey, they finally arrived at the property under their name after 3 hours. The time spent on transportation is really too much. When they came to this 33-story building with great effort, they found that it was actually a food court. Li Ji then listed a row of lease contracts for everyone and said, "These are the lease contracts for these shops, and they've also been transferred to our Fan Olin's name." They stood in front of the 33-story building and looked around, and found that there were actually quite a few people coming and going, taking the airship or walking to Wheat. This is one of the most prosperous areas of Juntan Space Station, and it is natural that the business here is so good. Everyone could smell the aroma of food just by standing at the bottom of the building, and Fanny swallowed her saliva unconvincingly. She said, "Why don't we keep this layout and not drive these tenants away?" Mo said helplessly, "Then we have to find a place to settle down, right?" At this time, the three-dimensional structure of the building was projected in front of Li Ji. She said, "In fact, the entire area on the top floor has never been rented out. This was originally the management office of this building." Fan and I nodded and said, "We can settle down here. Later, we will hang up our Fan Oling signboard, which can be regarded as a facade." Nanling covered his head and said, "Boss, we're a arms company. Is it really okay to put it in a place like this?" The idea of opening an arms company in a food court really made Nanling exclaim in his heart. Fan and I said nonchalantly, "What's wrong with opening it here? I can also open it here and have a revenue of 1 billion every year." "Very good, this can earn 1 billion every year without doing anything, which obviously makes Fan and I want to lie down and do nothing. There is no way, Boss Fan and I is like this, he is so powerful for a while and then he is so bad for a while." Previously, they had already opened up the initial Anx Hades Locust disaster mode together, so it was normal for her to want to mess around for a while now. Everyone entered the building and endured the fragrance that filled the building to the top floor. This office is quite luxurious and occupies a large area. Nanling stood at the door of the office, looking at the door frame that was empty and suddenly proposed, "Our company's products are weapons blessed by 3 elements. Why don't we each use our conceptual spiritual power to leave a word here, which can be regarded as a plug for our company and an advertisement?" Fan and I heard it without saying a word, and first left a fan character on the door frame, as if the fan character had the meaning of burning the sky. Then it was no, and she also happily left a blue mo character full of awe and the wrath of the gods. Nanling then wrote his own link character elegantly and sharply. After doing all this, they smiled at each other in tacit understanding. Unconsciously, the tacit understanding between the three of them has been cultivated. After doing all this, they stepped in and began to divide this luxurious office. Since this is their place to stay, they naturally have to divide it into suitable rooms. Mo looked around and then said, "Xiaonan, do you want to share a room with me?" Nanling swallowed his saliva at the time. What does this mean? Is it a hint or an explicit statement? Fanny immediately hugged Mo and said, "No, I want to share a room with you, and we won't take him." Mo looked at Fanny helplessly, and suddenly she had a headache. She wanted to cultivate more feelings with Nanling. Although she was willing in her heart, it didn't mean that she couldn't compete for favor, right? But unexpectedly, Fanny actually wanted to tie her up. It was so cunning. Nanling shrugged and said that you were happy. He really didn't mind this kind of thing at all. After all, his mind is now on cultivation, how can he have time for love? So he said, "Well, I'll give this place to you guys. I'll go upstairs and take a look." Mo stopped him and said, "This is already the top floor." Nanling said, "No, there's a rooftop." He said, "I just saw the 3D map." The rooftop has been made into a big garden. In fact, it's not a problem to use it as a residence after some renovation. Mo immediately became interested and said, "Okay, I'll go take a look too." Fanny said, "Let's go together." Nanling. He's been relied on, right? I always feel like I've suddenly become precious. Chapter 291. My boss and I are fighting for my wife. On the rooftop, Nanling looked at the overwhelming publicity about the Galaxy Fairy Finals with a bit of boredom, as if they were going to make it a unique festival. However, these people will never know that the true core of the Galaxy Fairy has been opened up by them. If we participate in the competition now, will we beat those people? Fanny was lying on the edge of the rooftop railing, half of her body hanging outside, like a girl who wanted to commit suicide. Of course, Nanling and Mo would not worry about her. After all, if she fell down, there would be nothing else but a hole in the ground. Mo said, "That's not necessarily true. The Galaxy Fairy and the Disaster of the Underworld Locust have different ways of playing. Don't forget that we can only send out 2 people at most at the beginning of the game of the Galaxy Fairy." Fanny said, "Then it's just me and Mo, the 2 of us can make a fusion furnace." Nanling felt something was wrong. He thought Fanny was going to pester him to disturb his mind, but now it seems that Fanny is competing for favor with him. What's wrong? Nanling looked at Fanny in a tangled way, and saw that she was looking at him provocatively and with a smirk. After all, they were birds of a feather, and he immediately understood what she meant. "I just don't want you and Mo to have an easy life." Nanling was at a loss for a moment. What was the matter with this act full of revenge? Just because he rejected Fanny twice, she started to retaliate in this way? To be honest, Nanling didn't mind at all. After all, one was his creditor and the other was his boss, and they could do whatever they wanted. So he gave Fanny a gentle smile, which made Fanny stunned for a moment, and then turned her head away unnaturally. Mo was speechless beside him. She felt that there was really a thing that could conquer another. Nanling's tolerant character could really match Fanny's lawless temper. Mo asked calmly, "This roof seems to be good, let's transform it and make it our residence." Nanling was at a loss. Why? He thought it was just him, and at most he could bring redstone. Mo said, "It's big enough up there. We can separate 3 rooms and have a large activity area. In fact, I want to arrange 5 rooms up there, 1 for Sister Liji and Hongxi. The top floor office below should remain the same. After all, we still have a company, and we always need a place to do business and talk." Nanling nodded in agreement, and then they began to study the plan of roof renovation together. There is no need to describe this kind of thing too much. In short, although the Jumpton space station is more troublesome in personal transportation, it is really impeccable in public services. As long as the money is in place, any change is just a matter of command. Not long after, the top of the 33-story building, which has been renamed Fan Molin Building, seemed to have an additional floor. It was not until then that Nanling realized that although this 33-story building was only less than 100 meters high, the actual height reported at the time was 200 meters. In other words, as long as the subsequent funds are sufficient, it can continue to build upwards. This can also be regarded as a special economic model of the Star Federation. Even if the height reported at the beginning was only 100 meters, as long as the price is in place, it is completely possible to continue to buy height upwards. Of course, that was unnecessary, because Nanling had discovered long ago that the height of buildings in the Jumpton space station should be limited. Looking around, there are generally high-rise buildings ranging from 100 to 150 meters in height. And the distance between each building is very wide, which may not be so good in terms of space utilization, but being in it naturally gives you a sense of openness and grandeur. Nanling's new residence is a small container-like house that was hoisted by a transport plane. It is fully equipped, and he does not pursue living space. Anyway, there is only a small space for lying down. What he values is that this house is placed on the edge of the roof of the Fan Molin building. He can open the side wall of the house and have a panoramic view of the most prosperous area of the Jumpton space station. He can sit on the top of this 100-meter-high building, drinking his favorite sparkling juice while reading the information sent back from Gichen. Gichen has been sending encrypted information, which is encrypted and decrypted by Liji, a digital life, so the information security can still be guaranteed. This information is basically the decoding research of King Shuan civilization, as well as some research results on the life forms on King Shuan. With the biotechnology of King Shuan civilization, it is very helpful to deconstruct the mystery of life on King Shuan. Then he saw one of the entries and was very surprised. That is, through the biotechnology research of King Shuan civilization, Ge Chen analyzed the blood composition of the blood lice killed by Nan Ling. It is indeed the blood from the giant beast, and even after millions of years of fermentation and condensation in the body of blood lice, it is a kind of blood with great life energy. Even if this blood is diluted 100 times, it can be used as a nutrient solution for healing and recuperation, and it is more effective and gentler. The overall performance will be improved by about 20% compared with the previous nutrient solution. And if it is diluted 10 times, that would be amazing. It actually has the function of delaying organ aging. Although there are many ways to delay aging in this era, this tenfold diluted blood lice blood is undoubtedly better than ever before. Only 10 milliliters per month can easily delay a person's lifespan to more than 300 years old. And if it is the original liquid, 100 milliliters of the original liquid is enough to restore the cells of a person's organs to the best state, and the number of times the cells can divide is greatly increased. To be honest, this is definitely a strategic material. He sent a message to Ge Chen at the time. Do you still have the blood lice? Can we try to capture and breed them? Ge Chen, how did you think of this aspect all of a sudden? We have tried many methods this year, and as a result, these blood lice have multiplied a lot, but none of them has the effect of the original blood lice. It can be judged that it is not that this type of blood lice is powerful, but that the blood they previously absorbed is powerful. The giant beast was originally a carrier of collective consciousness created by the King Shuan civilization, but it was a pity that it was not able to set off in the end and only became a carrier of collective memory. According to our calculations, in about 2,000 years, its fossilization level will not be enough to support those memories. What we are doing now is to try to reproduce some of the biological agents of the King Shuan civilization. But current research shows that when these biological agents strengthen the human body, they will also reduce the human body's perception of spiritual power. Nan Ling frowned and asked, is the human body enhancement of King Shuan civilization in conflict with the path of cultivation? Ge Chen said, no, in fact, it doesn't matter after entering the foundation building period, and it can even promote the accumulation of body energy, which complements your cultivation theory. There will be some conflicts in the early stage, but it can be easily overcome. Nan Ling breathed a sigh of relief. What he expected was that this kind of biotechnology could promote the path of cultivation, but it seems that it can't help him for the time being. But this kind of thing can't be rushed. Nan Ling and Ge Chen explained the recent gains of everyone in the Star Federation, so that Fanny's old father could grasp her whereabouts. It must be said that he really played the role of a traitor to the extreme. Ge Chen was relieved to hear that Fanny had been playing badly recently. He said, that's good, you just find her more fun that is not so dangerous. Things like the previous extermination of the Death Star pirates were too much. Do you understand? Nan Ling quickly expressed his understanding. Ge Chen immediately transferred 1 million Lingzhu points to him and said, take this money, it is your bonus and also your activity fund. If you don't have enough money, just ask me for more. Ge Yi is so generous. Nan Ling was filled with joy and admiration. Although he can get 150 million from Funlin Weapon Company every year, which is definitely a huge sum of money, he still respects people who give him money readily. As for Fanny's hostility towards him, is it important? His task now is to make the boss happy. Chapter 292 Multiple Insurance. Don't bother the Death Star pirates anymore. I've been warned that there's someone behind that Death Star pirates. Nan Ling was quite surprised when he got this warning. He asked, Uncle, I still don't understand. The Death Star pirates are obviously a group of looters, right? Why? Ge Chen said, because the big guys always have some things that are inconvenient for them to do and need someone of this status to do them. Nan Ling understood. This is the big guy's black glove, but I don't know if there is such a term in this era. He said, okay, Uncle, I will be careful not to let Fanny's thinking go in this direction. Ge Chen finally said, okay, take good care of Fanny. Now that I, as a father, can't take care of her, I can only ask you to do it. This kind of request is a bit strange. Nan Ling just responded simply and didn't say anything more. This kind of thing is not suitable for too much description. He checked his room again and felt that it was to his liking, so he went out. The garden outside has been trimmed clean and now has become an open platform, where everyone usually performs martial arts or gathers. Most stood aside with their eyes constantly jumping, and light screams appeared and disappeared in front of her. It was obvious that the butler was busy dealing with this new property. This kind of auxiliary work has always been handled by her, but now Thongxia has obviously taken over some of this work, and she looks much better. Thongchi was originally trained according to the quality of followers. Although he is now mediocre on the zooxia, he can still make a significant contribution in these logistical matters. Over there, Liji's prosthesis has fallen silent, and her main program is performing program self-checks and editing stronger firewalls on the zooxia. Obviously, the digital life on this space station makes her quite nervous. She must first ensure that the zooxia itself is stable before she can feel at ease. In fact, if it weren't for Nanling's request, she just wanted to stay on the zooxia. Fanna came over at this time, stretched lazily, and perfectly displayed her breathtaking curves in front of Nanling. She said, "What do you think we should do next?" Nanling was confused, and he said, "Boss, aren't you going shopping? I remember you would go shopping wherever you went." Fanna said, "Because it's not free here. This restricted area makes me feel like there's a lid on my head, and it's very uncomfortable. I actually want to leave here now." Nanling thought, "What the hell, you've only been here for less than a day, and you're changing your mind again." No wonder Gichen just asked Nanling so solemnly to keep an eye on Fanny. This is because no one knows a daughter better than her father. Nanling immediately proposed an idea. "But boss, aren't you interested in the food here? When you came up just now, I saw that you seemed to want to try it." Fanny was quite interested when she heard this. She hesitated for a while and said, "Well, I originally wanted to settle down here and then go find trouble with the remaining forces of the Death Star pirates. It would be best if I could find that Black Death Emperor and kill him completely. Now that I think about it, there is no rush. Let's eat all the delicious food in this building first." Nanling immediately flattered and agreed, and at the same time secretly wiped a cold sweat. Fortunately, the young lady was persuaded in advance, otherwise I really didn't know how to persuade her. Regarding the handling of the Death Star pirates, Nanling knew that it would be difficult to deal with. How could Gichen not want to put this force that attempted to attack his daughter to death? But he asked Nanling to persuade Fanny instead, which obviously meant that the force behind it was too amazing. Nanling also knew who was behind the Black Death Emperor. It must be the Oracle. Whenever this kind of digital god was involved, it would be really troublesome. Let's go eat together, and eat whatever we want." Nanling made a very flattering suggestion. Fanny was the first to express her support, and she forced Mo, who still wanted to work seriously, to go with her. Mo had no choice but to be dragged away. Fortunately, Thongchi is here now, and he can be the agent for many things. In this way, Nanling also took advantage of it to taste all kinds of food in this food court. There are 33 floors, and each floor has more than a dozen large and small shops. The entire food court is almost 500 food merchants in total, which is really dazzling. In the end, Fanna simply decided to start from the bottom, and go up one floor a day to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of her own industry. "Shonen, you have to remember clearly, if Mo and I think the place is not delicious, we will not rent it to them next time." She really treated it as a career. Nanling said that everything was fine, as long as this young lady didn't think about running out to fight again. Boss Fanna's boring life began from then on, and her willfulness was also shown in front of the people at the Star Federation for the first time. During this period of time, the food court, renamed the Fanmoling Building, began to frequently close shops and then recruit new shops to move in. Several old shops were terminated, and some shops with poor business were suddenly exempted from rent for a year. This is very mysterious. Those shops that were paid compensation and then terminated were those that both Fanny and Mo thought were not delicious, while those that were exempted from rent for a year were those that both Fanny and Mo thought were delicious. This is Nanling's management method, which is full of flattery. But it is precisely because of this that the shops in this entire building began to be replaced at a rather alarming speed. Slowly, this place has become a shop that suits the tastes of Fanny and Mo. This is the method of Nanling, a man. He knows that Fanny, a woman, has a temper like a wild horse. Even if she stops to chew a little more when she encounters a delicious tender grass, she will sooner or later run to the pasture. So he chose to find a pasture to tie this wild horse. The food in this entire building is the pasture to tie Fanny, and it is his multiple insurance. Nanling even secretly rented a store for this purpose, of course, with the 1 million yuan of funding from Gichen, so that if Fanny got tired of the food in the whole building, he would personally go out and find a way to deal with her. "You really racked your brains for her," Mo said with some jealousy after knowing this. Nanling said, "This is all work. If you want to eat, you can order whatever you want when you get back. I will cook everything for you." Mo shook her head and refused, then said, "You might as well accompany me to the roof to practice. I have been accompanying Fanny to eat a lot these days, and my weight has increased again." Really? Why does Fanny's flesh only grow on her chest, while mine grows on the back? Nanling secretly glanced at Sister Mo's round and perky breasts, and couldn't help saying, "Actually, I think it's good to grow there." Mo suddenly glared at him sternly, then realized something and softened her eyes helplessly and said, "Don't look like a pervert, you won't really do anything." Nanling. He felt like he was stabbed. Was it warning him not to do something, or blaming him for not doing anything? P.S. The daughters have all recovered, but my wife is still running a fever, which is worrying. Chapter 293 The Guest Who Was Led Astray. On this day, Fanny, who inevitably had a layer of fat on her belly, was lying on the roof basking in the sun. Nanling and Mo were studying how to use the means of cultivation to refine the excess fat in the body into essence as quickly as possible. Originally, this was not difficult, but they had sufficient essence and excess nutrition in their bodies, so it was a big troublesome to refine it. After all, the excess essence always had to go somewhere. So Nanling couldn't help but think of the relationship between essence, energy and spirit. Excess essence can be transformed into ki, and excess ki can also be transformed into spirit. This should be a correct way of cultivation, and even if it is improved bit by bit, it should be able to become a good method of cultivation. At this moment, Li Ji sent a message. "Someone is here to see you. He is at the door of the office downstairs. It is the commander of the Elk Fleet last time, the one called Lu Lai." Nanling murmured in surprise. "Why is this person here?" Fanny was playing dirty at this time. Under her short shirt, a small circle of tender waist meat was exposed. She said lazily, "Oh, he sent me a message and said he wanted to visit me. But I ignored him. You can send him away for me." Nanling and Mo looked at each other, and then got up and went downstairs tacitly. On the way, Mo said worriedly, "Although I was very troubled when Fanny was making trouble, I'm a little worried now seeing her like this." Nanling said helplessly, "Are you worried about raising her into a fat girl with burning hair?" Mo couldn't hold it back at the time, and covered her mouth and laughed softly. Then he patted Nanling's arm gently and said, "How can you say that about Fanny? It's really bad." They chatted all the way and soon came to the office downstairs. A man in casual clothes but with a straight figure and full of military temperament appeared. Nanling saw that he was only in his 20s, but was surprised to see that he looked quite decadent and had a distinct old age. He said, "Mr. Lu." Lu Lai was slightly stunned. Originally, when the two appeared, Lu Lai's eyes were attracted by Mo. Mo was full of deadly magnetic fields, which were full of attraction to everyone. She was born to be the most eye-catching person. When she stood with Fanny, her charm was overshadowed by Fanny's brilliance from the inside out, but when she stood with Nanling, that natural magnetic field began to work. Lu Lai's eyes were indeed full of Mo at that moment. He felt that if he was 10 years younger, he would probably be ready to move. He felt that he was facing a woman who could be called a miracle. However, Nanling's words awakened him and made him unable to ignore it anymore. He was surprised and said, "Have you investigated my age?" Nanling shook his head and said, "No, I can tell from your breath. It seems that you have used a lot of maintenance products. The effect is not bad." Lu Lai shook his head and said, "I'm already 71 this year. The so-called health products only make me look younger. In fact, my body has declined a lot." Nanling no longer needs the essence to go to his brain. His brain has been accustomed to this state of strengthening, or in other words, his body strengthening has completed the brain strengthening over time. At this time, seeing Lu Lai's life spectrum and sensing the breath in his body, he said, "You should have practiced for a while in your early years, but when you were practicing, no one told you to try to avoid touching women at least in the early stage." Lu Lai's face changed when he heard this, and then he said solemnly, "What is this gentleman's name?" Mo was watching from the side and was very surprised. Did he convince Lu Lai, who was born in the Lu family of the Federation, with just a few words? She also felt it herself. The divine consciousness of the golden elixir did make her see that the body magnetic field of Lu Lai in front of her was somewhat withered and dim. But she was definitely not as amazing as Nanling, who could guess all of Lu Lai's early life experiences. Nanling smiled warmly and said, "I'm Nanling, and I am appointed as the third mate of Zhuoxia." Mo calmly said to Lu Lai, "You have already met Ling Yemo, the first mate of Zhuoxia. If you have anything to say, please come in and talk." Then he made way for Lu Lai to enter. Lu Lai nodded slightly and walked into this seemingly luxurious but ordinary office in his eyes. He sat down in front of his seat. Nanling was just wondering how to continue when Mo gave him a look. He sat down opposite Lu Lai with understanding. Mo came to the bar next to him and said, "What would you like, Mr. Lu?" Here are juice, light wine, and tea. Light wine is an elegant term for low-alcohol beverages. Lulai was surprised. He didn't expect that Mo, the first mate, would do such a thing. Seeing his surprised expression, Mo smiled and said, I was the first mate on the ship, so I naturally had to put the captain first. Now that we're off the ship and Fanny is not here, I naturally have to put my husband first. Vanity. Nanling was filled with the damn vanity at that moment. To vanity. Lulai's eyes obviously widened, and his emotional spectrum obviously fluctuated violently. I don't know why he had so much drama in his mind when he just met someone. Then he smiled bitterly at Nanling and said, a cup of hot water will be enough. Sorry to bother you, madam, to answer Mr. Nan's question just now. When you were young, you had poor self-control, so how could you resist the beauty in front of you? Mo directly twisted an alloy cup into a donut. At the time, she met someone who could resist it, and this old man really talked about things that were not related to the topic. Nanling glanced at the alloy twist with clear fingerprints, shrank his neck and said, so Mr. Lu should have given up the path of cultivation later, but he did not undergo body transformation, but strengthened his body instead. Lulai nodded repeatedly and said, I just equipped myself with a super brain as an auxiliary, and then it was the root of physical strengthening. After all, our Lu family has an ancestral precept that does not allow body mechanization transformation unless it is absolutely necessary. Nanling covered his mouth and pondered, then asked, I have an unwelcome request, can I collect some blood samples from the old man? At this time, Mo brought a cup of hot water to Lulai and a cup of juice to Nanling, and then sat down next to him. It seemed that he asked angrily, how can you ask someone to take blood samples right away? Nanling was pressed against Mo's body, and he felt the soft touch from his side. He felt very strange at the time. However, he still explained. It's mainly because Uncle Yu's medical preparation company is developing a new drug that can delay aging. I want to take Mr. Lu's blood sample and send the information to ask if someone like the old man who has strengthened his body through other means can use that kind of reagent product. Lulai was quite interested when he heard it, and he immediately said, okay, I'll give you my blood information now. Actually, there is no need for blood samples. I sample and analyze my blood every day to track my physical condition. As he said that, he directly sent a very detailed blood report to Nanling. Nanling immediately sent the report to Gichen. He said, I have sent it to Ancient Domain. This may be an interesting topic for them. Lulai was very interested in this topic. He said, if there is a new drug, I can buy some to try out the effect. Nanling hurriedly said, I'm afraid that won't work, because our medicine is still in the experimental stage and has not been certified by Ancient Domain. Seeing that Lulai seemed a little bored, he said, but I am very confident in our technology and biological preparations. If you don't mind, I can invite you to be a volunteer to test the medicine. Lulai couldn't help but frowned. Will there be any side effects? Nanling smiled and said, they are all mature technologies, how can there be side effects? It's just that those people in the direct lineage of the Ancient Domain clan, well, I can't say any more. Lulai showed an expression of understanding. He nodded and said, I understand everything. Then I'll trouble Mr. Nan when you have any news. Nanling said, why call me Mr. Nan? Call me brother and I'll call you brother. This is more intimate. Lulai laughed at the time and said, Brother Nan, you are really interesting. Nanling also praised. Brother Lu is also a generous person, easy to get along with. Mo thought it was amazing, how could these two men become friends in just a few words? Then she received a proud message from Nanling. The strategy was successful. She suddenly laughed dumbly, and then began to think further. Wasn't her father strategized in this way? Further, could she also be a strategized target? Thinking of this, she felt something was wrong. But what was this Lulai doing here? The topic had been completely diverted to nowhere. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 294. The Cunning Rabbit Has 3 Burrows. Nanling used his unique way to observe the words and expressions and then talked about the topic that Lulai was concerned about. He quickly became friends with Lulai. When they talked about business, the two sides seemed to be much more harmonious, and some things in Lulai's mouth seemed to be more fluent and natural. Lulai said, I came here to apologize for the previous misunderstanding. I'm sorry that I was on duty before and I have a holiday today, but it seems that I came at the wrong time. Misky doesn't seem to be free. Originally, he might have come with some humiliation, but now he seemed very peaceful when he spoke about this matter. Nanling smiled and said, we should apologize for this. Fanny is doing some new research. She can't get out of it for a while once she immerses herself in it. If you don't mind, you can talk to us if you have anything to say. Lulai was surprised to hear this and said, is Miss Yu still researching something? Nanling said meaningfully, of course, but I can't tell you what it is specifically. Mo glanced at him. What else could Fanny be researching? Isn't she just researching what to eat for dinner? But Lulai didn't know. He just suddenly realized, yes, brother, you also registered this weapons company in our federation. You must be developing weapons again. Nanling smiled but didn't say anything. Lulai said again, by the way, since your company is a weapons company, why don't you introduce your company's products to me? If it's appropriate, I also want to purchase some new equipment for the elk fleet. This is the transfer of benefits. Obviously, this is a wise man who knows that if he wants to get forgiveness, it is better to give more practical things. Nanling didn't expect that there would be business coming so soon. He thought for a moment and said, brother, wait a minute. Let's make some preparations. I'll take you to do the operation verification later. In fact, everything was basically ready when he finished speaking. Nanling sent Lulai a temporary account. Lulai was surprised. What is this? Nanling said, this is a temporary account of Galaxy Fairy. You can use it to log into our Galaxy Fairy game space as a visitor. All our weapons and equipment can be tested for you in that game space. Lulai said strangely, I know that this game has opened many functional modules for the fleet and can conduct virtual reality training. Can weapon testing be done now? Nanling said, well, this game is called a game, but it actually feels like a collection of wisdom from many great powers. It is very great and amazing. Thinking about it this way, it was really a loss not to choose the shares of Galaxy Fairy. But he felt that it was nothing. Anyway, Fanny didn't care, and he was not the kind of person who felt sorry for what had happened. Mo didn't say anything either. Lulai was actually a bit interested. He tried to connect to the game space of Zhuoxia, and then said to Nanling and Mo who appeared in the game space, I'm also a loyal fan of this game. This looks quite friendly. By the way, will you watch the upcoming Galaxy Fairy finals? Nanling shook his head and said, I may not have time to watch it. In fact, we rarely play this game now. At most, we use it to test the power of weapons. I have already cleared the game, so of course I don't play it anymore. Lulai felt a little sorry, but he soon saw 3 types of firearms with Divine Blade, Absolute Flame, and Silver Robe, but they only have 1 or 2 types respectively. But just like this, Lulai also felt that his eyes were opened. He was shocked. This kind of weapon was something he had never imagined, but there was no doubt that they were much better than conventional weapons. The only bad thing was that this kind of weapon must have the corresponding attribute of cultivation before it can be used. Fortunately, the entry threshold is not high, and it can be used with a simple blessing technique that is not even a basic spell. Nanling waited patiently for a while, waiting for Lulai to use each gun, and then after understanding the pros and cons, he asked, how is it, brother, are Fan Olding's weapons okay? Lulai nodded repeatedly, and said, this is great. He suddenly pondered halfway through. Looking at Nanling, he said seriously, to be honest, brother, I originally just wanted to buy some casually. But now, I need to go back and calculate carefully. Nanling smiled and said, I understand, brother, go back and calculate carefully and give a number. It doesn't matter if the business cannot be done. Our company didn't expect to make much profit. That's right, they are just playing. Lulai knows too well the playful thoughts of these young masters and young ladies. Wasn't he the same when he was young? He said seriously, brother, it's embarrassing to say that. Fan Olding's weapons are definitely good weapons. Believe me, you'll soon become a hot arms dealer in the Star Federation. This statement has already shown one thing, that is, he has been completely impressed by Fan Olding's weapons, and is ready to go back and discuss it carefully before making a large purchase. The 2 parties agreed on a time to contact each other again, and the news of King Xuanyi also came. Nanling said, oh, Uncle Give said that he can design a special adjustment reagent according to your physical condition, which should be able to slow down the aging of your body. He said and sent a formula directly. Lulai, what is this? Nanling said, this is a formula specially adjusted according to my physical condition. It has no effect for others to use. If you're interested, you can follow that formula to prepare the reagent yourself. 1 dose a day will soon show the effect. Targeted drugs for special people, this kind of thing is not difficult for Gye-Chen, who has inherited the King Shuan civilization. Obviously, Gye-Chen has the same idea, which is to make Lulai a breakthrough in the Star Federation market and sell their products to him. Lulai probably understood the ins and outs of this, but he still said with gratitude, "Then please ask Brother Nan to express my gratitude to the old master on my behalf. If it really works, I will definitely invite people I know to come and show my support." Nanling hurriedly made some polite remarks before sending Lulai away. After everyone left, Mo asked curiously, "Are you developing connections here?" Nanling said, "A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. We can't put all our chips on the ancient domain. Why not take advantage of the close relationship with the ancient domain now and borrow its resources to develop our power here? If we fall out with the ancient domain later, we can rest assured as long as we have a firm foothold here." Mo covered her face and said, "Your sense of crisis is too strong, isn't it?" Nanling said, "Uncle Gyu also thinks so." Mo asked unexpectedly, "When did you and the master discuss it?" Nanling shook his head and said, "There is no discussion, it's just a tacit understanding between men. In order to protect the people around him and to support the family, men have to make more considerations." Mo did not ask any more questions, as she did not have such foresight. But since Nanling had thought of this, she was willing to follow his ideas, which could only make her feel at ease rather than troubled. And it must be said that Fan Oling Weapons was indeed officially opened because of this. Anyway, just 1 day later, Nanling received a large order from the Elk Fleet. Chapter 295 Galaxy Ball. Von Malin fired the first shot through the purchase order of the Elk Fleet. Of course, this purchase order does not involve any physical objects, but is a limited authorization agreement for 100,000 firearms of various types. After the contract is signed, the Quartermaster Department of the Elk Fleet will have 100,000 authorizations. To be honest, according to the market price, it does not make much money, that is, 50 million yuan, and this is still Lulai trying to sign as much as possible. But how to say it, this is a good start. Half of it is counted as the public account for the operation of Zhuoxia, and the remaining 30% is divided into Nanling. Nanling can earn 7.5 million Lingzhu points because of this project. Well, this is family income. With an extra income, Nanling is naturally in a good mood. But what Nanling didn't expect was that Fanna suddenly sent a message. "Have you discussed your business? If you're ready, come up quickly." Both of them were quite surprised. They came to the roof together and found that Fanny was already dressing herself up. "What's wrong? Boss, are you going to attend a banquet?" Nanling asked. Fanny said worriedly, "All the contestants of Galaxy Fairy are here, and the official Galaxy Fairy is going to hold a ball so that the contestants can get to know each other. That guy Fox actually sent the invitation to us. I find it annoying too. But who made us owe him a favor?" Nanling turned around and saw Li Ji also started to dress up, and couldn't help asking, "Are we all going?" Fanny said, "Everyone has to go, because we are a team." Mo heard this and pondered. "In that case, we have different meanings to the game of Galaxy Fairy. Perhaps that is why we must attend this ball." Nanling also nodded. He also thought of this aspect. There must be something important waiting for them at this ball. He said, "You'll know when you go there. Although we try to avoid trouble, we are not afraid of some things that we can't avoid." This sentence touched Fanny's heart. She smiled and said, "That's right. I have been deliberately keeping a low profile before, which really makes me uncomfortable." "How could you be low-key?" Mo's eyes lit up and said, "Now there is a problem. That is, Shonen, you don't have a dress yet, right?" Nanling was stunned at the time, and a bad premonition came to her mind. Fanny immediately checked the time, and then said, "We still have 4 hours to prepare. Let's go." As she said that, she was about to force Nanling to look at the clothes. Nanling felt very confused at the time. How could things turn out like this? 2 hours later, in the virtual community clothing store of Juntan Space Station, Nanling had no desire to live. Because Fanny and Mo had a disagreement for the first time, they each chose a dress and asked Nanling to change it 12 times for this, and they insisted on their own opinions and refused to give in. It was hard to believe that they would actually have a dispute, and this dispute was caused by him. Nanling felt guilty about this, and he said at the time, "How about we buy them all, and then I will just wear one today, and wear the other one next time I have the chance?" This time Mo said very firmly, "No, this kind of thing can't be done casually." Fanny also said unconvinced, Yes, it can't be done casually. I still think the one I like is better looking. Mo. For this kind of occasion, it's not enough to look good, what's more important is solemnity and temperament. Fanny. The one I chose is also very elegant. Nanling saw that they were going to argue again. He gritted his teeth and picked a dress from the side and said, "But I like this one, why not wear this one?" He didn't give them time to argue anymore, and paid quickly, using his own private money. That's called heartache. But in order to keep his ears clean, he could only cut the Gordian knot and spend money to avoid disaster. As a result, he didn't expect that his behavior made the eyebrows of the two ladies frown. He quickly said before they could speak, "We only have 2 hours now. We can't bring combat armor to this kind of party. There is actually a great risk here. We only have 2 hours to solve this problem now." Fanny and Mo looked at each other, and then reluctantly nodded in agreement. Nanling took a long breath, and then immediately returned to reality and worked hard. He found that he was too difficult. How could his life be so tiring? In this regard, he could only open Liji's body. Well, don't get me wrong, this is actually the safety emergency plan he thought of. Just hide the equipment they need in Liji's body. Liji was very wary of this, and she said, "Don't hide guns in my chest and buttocks anymore. If you really pull guns out from those places, I think I will be socially dead." Nanling hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Don't worry, I'll make some space in your abdominal cavity and put a small folding cargo box in it." Liji nodded reluctantly and said, "Okay, it's better to hide it in the stomach than in the chest." However, she was too happy too early. When Nanling performed the operation on her and let her stand up, the cyborg's A4 waist, which originally looked slender and soft, had now turned into a bucket waist, and it even looked like she had a small belly. Liji was about to collapse. "My digital life doesn't need to care about beauty, right?" Nanling said awkwardly. "I can't help it. After all, no matter how small the folding cargo hold is, it still takes up space." Seeing this, Fan and I said lightly, "Then take out the things. It's just a dance party. What's the danger? Could it be that someone would risk offending the entire human civilization and attack everyone at this dance party?" This is the truth, but since Fan and I said so, Liji actually closed the hatch on her abdomen silently and consciously went to find a looser dress. This matter is also easy to solve. Find a loose long skirt to wear and you can also look beautiful, and even show a kind of sensual beauty. Fan and I always felt that something was wrong and felt that she seemed to be offended. But since the matter has been resolved, it is a good thing. So this time the 5 people on the Zhuoxia participated in this dance together. As for his real source of security, it was the soft and white hand he was holding at this time. Mo said a little embarrassedly, "What are you doing?" Nanling said, "I can only feel at ease if I hold your hand." Fan rolled her eyes and didn't want to pay attention to this shameless guy. Do you really think that people here don't understand his temper? What he is holding is not Mo's hand, but the Lingu on the back of Mo's hand. The spiritual treasure attached to the back of Mo's hand has now become the source of Nanling's sense of security. Fan couldn't help but complain, "I think you may have some kind of mental illness and need treatment." Nanling said, "This is not a disease. If you don't believe me, ask Sister Liji. She can understand me." Liji nodded and said, "Well, I think you may have a problem." Nanling's eyes widened, with a deflated expression, which caused the ladies next to him to snicker. Thongship, who had little presence, watched this scene from the side and felt, well, he thought it was good to have a peaceful life. Chapter 296. Extreme Luxury. The place where this grand galaxy ball was held was not far from the Fanolin building. Seeing that the time was almost up, they simply walked out, staggering in their best clothes. Even in the starry special zone, such a scene of dressing up for a trip was still quite rare, so the 5 people naturally attracted the attention of a group of passers-by. At this time, Fan and I was wearing a fiery red evening dress, which was her usual color, very gorgeous and beautiful. The only bad thing was that because her waist had thickened a lot recently, her waist and abdomen were not very tight this time, completely outlining her eye-catching figure. Mo was wearing a royal blue dress, which was also dignified and gorgeous, and she had an elegant and mysterious temperament, which was also eye-catching. Naturally, the others were a little bit worse. Let's not talk about Hongji. Liji was wearing a goose yellow dress, looking like a lotus in clear water. She was a digital life, and in the eyes of others, she might even be just a cyborg, but she seemed extremely confident and would not be affected by the outside world at all. As for Nanlin, he was just a little handsome. His temperament was completely restrained around the 2 ladies, and he would not do anything that would steal the show. The venue for the ball was a magnificent palace-like building. It was rumored that it was built in the style of the royal palace of the ancient human era, and it was the satisfactory work of the most famous architect on the Jumton space station. But in Nanling's eyes, this palace seemed to be out of place. Fanny looked up and frowned in a strange way and said, "This palace is gorgeous, but I always feel that something is wrong." Mo also frowned and said, "It seems to be a mixture of many styles. It looks a little strange, but I can't tell what's strange." Li Ji sighed with a tired look and said, "You young ladies are really, who can tell such things?" Thongchi also nodded in confusion. He couldn't see what was wrong with this building. Anyway, it was full of a kind of classical beauty, which made him pleasing to the eye and overwhelmed. Nanling said, "Of course there is a problem. This palace is clearly a mixture of ancient architectural styles from two different civilizations, and there is no distinction between the primary and the secondary, so there seems to be some conflict in style." Mo nodded and said, "That's right. It turns out that the two different styles have not been integrated well. I didn't expect that you, Shonen, are so knowledgeable about ancient architecture." Nanling shook his head and didn't answer directly, but just replied casually, "This is a question of aesthetics. Maybe I am particularly talented in classical aesthetics." Mo turned his head and looked at him, and suddenly smiled and said, "In this case, I will trouble you to pick clothes for me next time." This smile simply stunned Nanlin, as if it charmed everyone. Fanny laughed out loud. "Good idea, since you don't like the clothes we picked for you, then next time you will pick clothes for us. If they don't look good, we will beat you up together." As she said that, she raised her little fist. Of course, Boss Fanny's little fist has no deterrent power at all, but it would be different if it was Mo's muscular arm. Nanling almost revealed her pain mask, which made her feel uncomfortable. Hongji, who was standing next to her, was afraid of marriage. Fortunately, they had already arrived in front of the palace called Treasure of Stars. A waiter stopped them politely and greeted them. "Dear ladies and gentlemen, do you have an invitation to the Galaxy Ball?" Fanny looked at the others. Those who got off the luxury flying car did not ask, and naturally the waiter led them into the palace. She curled her lips and understood that the waiter must have seen that they came on foot, so he made such a move. However, although she had the temper of a big lady, she was unexpectedly open-minded in this regard. She did not want to embarrass the little people. She directly sent the identification code she got and said, "This is our invitation, please take a look." The waiter took a look and immediately bowed and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't know that you and your partner were guests." He seemed a little panicked. Fanny had already walked over. Mo did not pay attention to the little people. Their neglect was actually the greatest tolerance to a certain extent. The same is true for Thongship. These young people of noble birth still maintain a certain degree of arrogance even if they have good temperaments. Nanling was a little surprised. This was different from what he was used to. However, he still patted the young waiter on the shoulder and said, "Hurry up and let the way for us, otherwise you'll really be derelict in your duty." The waiter breathed a sigh of relief. He was really panicked just now, fearing that these big shots would be angry because of his neglect. He hurriedly walked to the front and led the way with his back slightly bent. Nanling asked curiously, "You guys are having a big party this time? You actually used human waiters? I thought that the guiding would be done by the machine butler." When the waiter heard Nanling continue to talk to him, he immediately relaxed and said, "Generally, a dance party only needs machine waiters, but this time the standard has risen to the level of a state banquet, so we need human waiters to show respect." Then he said awkwardly, "But I made a mistake and I'm embarrassed." Nanling gently comforted him, "This is not a mistake. After all, it is one of your duties to prevent irrelevant people from breaking in. You just fulfilled your duty." The waiter looked at Nanling gratefully. He had a very good impression of Nanlin, and he also had a good impression of everyone on the Zhuoxia. Mo couldn't help but send a private message to Nanlin. "It seems that you have conquered another person." Nanling was stunned. Where did he offend his wife again? Mo smiled at him and said nothing more. She was convinced by her husband's mouth. He could gain a loyal fan in a few minutes. Perhaps this is also a kind of ability. They walked into the main hall of the Treasure of Stars. The waiter's work actually ended here. There were naturally other waiters serving in the inner hall. When he said goodbye, his face was full of reluctance. Even Nanling just smiled and said goodbye without any other action. For a stranger, he had expressed enough kindness. Nanling's attention was soon attracted by the luxurious and even extravagant palace decoration. He saw that the pillars of the palace were pure white and made of a special material, with a warm jade light. The walls around it were covered with various gemstone decorations made of original crystals, which make people feel beautiful at first, but amazing when they looked at them again. And although the dome was full of classical paintings, the materials of the dome and the walls were awesome, very precious super alloys. Including the ground, the floor was so smooth that it could even reflect shadows. It was not simple. It actually emitted a warm feeling. It was obviously some kind of spiritual material. Nanling was just sighing at the luxury here, but suddenly heard a voice in her ear. "My dear sister Fanny, I didn't expect you to show up here in the end. I thought you would not be interested in this kind of activity." It sounded a little weird and familiar. Nanling looked over and recognized Yu Qingfei at a glance. Fanny also raised her eyebrows and said, "My dearest sister Qingfei, I didn't expect you to come here too." The same weird tone seemed to mock Yu Qingfei for not being qualified to participate in this dance. The two sisters really started to confront each other as soon as they met. Chapter 297 Invitation from a Big Shot. The appearance of concubine Yu Qing was a little unexpected, but Fanny didn't really take it seriously. After all, concubine Yu Qing was not a contestant, but came here in the name of cultural exchange. She said a few words and waved her hand. "Okay, there's nothing to talk about with you, don't be an eyesore here." This look of indifference really made concubine Yu Qing angry. She wanted to get angry, but then she raised her eyebrows and said, "I know you look down on me, but you can't refuse what I give you." This look of strong back taste made Fanny alert. She asked, "What do you want to give me?" Concubine Yu Qing smiled and waved her hand, and then a middle-aged man with a big back hair and a meticulous look slowly moved to her side. Then he bowed slightly and said to Fanny, "Meet the young lady." Her. Nanling was a little surprised. He looked at Mo and saw that Mo frowned and showed a meaningful expression. Fanny suddenly pulled a long face and said, "Why do you call me that?" The man said, "To answer the eldest lady, you can call me Cow." Old Master King Jing learned that it was not easy for the eldest lady to make a living outside, so he specially sent me to take care of the eldest lady's daily life. At this time, Nanling received a message from Mo. "Ge King Jing, one of the elders of the Ge clan, he is planting an ale next to Fanny." Nanling said that he understood. In fact, when Thongxie was sent here, wasn't it Yu Chen who wanted to plant someone he could trust next to his daughter? He believed that in addition to him, Yu Chen must be able to get news about Fanny from Thongxie. Well, he suddenly realized that he seemed to be too active and took away all the work of Thongxie. As for this cow, Fanny was obviously resistant, but at this time he knew very well that this kind of thing could not be resisted. At the same time, he received two messages. "Fanny, hurry up and think of a way to reject it for me. I absolutely can't stand this kind of person. Mo, try to find a way to convince Fanny. I can do my best to prevent her from having a fit on the spot." No wonder Fanny just stared and didn't say anything. It turned out that she was persuaded by Mo. At this moment, Nanling was caught in the middle again. But for some reason, he was already somewhat adept at this situation. He first gave Mo a reassuring look, and then sent a message to Fanny. "Boss, this kind of thing will be difficult to handle." After all, Fanny didn't want to hear such reasoning. She said directly, "So, you're on Mo's side this time?" "Nanling, let's not talk about this at this time, right?" He simply changed his tone and asked, "Boss, now you don't even want to listen to what I say." Fanny, "Okay, you say it." Nanling breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were still able to communicate. He said, "I mean, we can't use tough methods to drive this cow away, right?" Fanny, "Of course, that will only make the elder of the clan hate me. No matter how willful I am, I can't cause trouble for my father." Nanling thought that this guy actually knew that he was willful. He said, "But if we find an excuse to prevaricate, let's not talk about whether the excuse is acceptable. Even if we succeed, it can only delay. The other party is very determined to mix sand between us." Fanny, "Speak to the point." Nanling, "Assign him work, keep him busy, and use him like a cow and horse." Fanny. She looked at Nanling in amazement, and felt that it seemed really refreshing to think about it from a different angle. She immediately decided, "Okay, use him like a cow and horse." Nanling immediately said, "In that case, then each of us will give 1% of Fan Oling shares to Hongxi. Although he is not very useful, he is one of us after all." He was a little rude to Hongxi. Fanny certainly didn't care about this kind of thing, she just didn't understand the intention of doing so. Seeing her puzzled expression, Nanling explained, "This way we can arrange this cow in our most important and only industry. The rest of us are shareholders, and we can arrange for him to work and make him speechless. Fanny said with deep conviction. It has to be you. At this time, she had been looking at Cow with scrutiny for a long time in reality, and suddenly showed a half smile and said, You want to follow me, but I don't accept all the trash. I need you to prove yourself. Cow did not feel humiliated when he heard this. He even prepared himself mentally when he came to Fanny. Now the situation is much better than he imagined. He took a deep breath and said, Please rest assured, miss, I will prove myself to you with my ability and loyalty. Fanny nodded and said, I look forward to your performance. Now stand behind me. Cow stood up quietly, then looked at the people behind Fanny, and stood at the end very tactfully. Mo was very satisfied when she saw this scene, and also agreed with Fanny's subsequent equity transfer proposal. She could easily see the benefits of doing so. Being able to make this Cow directly inferior to everyone else is only the most superficial first layer. The deeper layer is that it can also make Thongship completely loyal, which may be more important. After all, when Cow joined, whether or not to own the company's shares became a dividing line. Those who have shares are all our own people, partners, and those who don't have shares are just subordinates. Fanny figured it out, and she was happy. But concubine Yu King was very unhappy. She felt that Fanny had to at least make a big fuss before she could go back and flatter Fanny in front of her family. But in her opinion, Fanny agreed too readily. So she said abruptly, Can you just arrange the people sent by Grandpa King Jiang? Fanny was happy to hear this, because he had just signed a contract with Thongshi and officially became a partner with Thongship, so she smiled and asked, To be honest, I don't think there is anything wrong with this arrangement. After all, Cow can only be regarded as my servant, and the others are my partners. I can't arrange the servants in front of the partners. That's not in line with etiquette. Yu Qingfei said in disbelief at the time. How is this possible? However, Fanny didn't care what she said at all, but looked at Cow and said earnestly, Work hard, you also have the opportunity to become my partner. Cow was stunned by this, and he even said he didn't dare. But Fanny didn't explain in detail, because it was unnecessary. The truth is always more convincing than saying 10,000 words. When Cow found out that both Thongshi and Li Ji owned 8% of Fan Holdings shares, some changes would inevitably occur in his heart. That's right, they gave Thongshi 8% of the shares, because Mo temporarily discussed with Nanling and Fanny and decided to give 2% of the shares to Thongship. Li Ji had already gotten rid of her vulgar tastes and simply took out 2%, which was equal to redstone, and indeed avoided unnecessary troubles that might occur in the future. Zhuoxia's team was now completely stable, and by the way, Fanny could use this stability to fight back against those who had ulterior motives. She was very curious whether this joke could always stick to his bottom line. However, at this time, Fox, who invited them to the dance, suddenly came over in a hurry. He said, Why didn't you notify me when you came? Come with me, the master is waiting for you. Fanny was stunned. This is not what we agreed on. Indeed, they had not planned to meet a famous Xingcan pioneer so early. After all, it meant a lot of cause and effect. Who knew that? Fox smiled bitterly and said, But after my master learned that you had cleared the disaster of the underworld locusts, he couldn't wait to see you. Well, since it was the direct instruction of the Xingcan pioneer, there was really nothing he could do. While Fanny was still sighing, Nanling had already quickly sent a message in the hyperspace active group. Keep the channel open, don't talk nonsense later. Received X4. Everyone knew the seriousness of the matter, and even Fanny became serious and well-behaved. Then Zhuoxia and the other 5 followed Fox and left. Before leaving, Fanny said, Cow, you just wait here for us to come back. His Excellency Xingcan Pioneer is not someone you can contact yet. Cow responded deeply. Compared to Cow's calmness, Yu Qingfei almost bit her gums. Because she only felt that Fanny's previous words not someone you can contact were directed at her, saying that she was no longer qualified to contact the world that Fanny and the others were in contact with. But, what could she do if that was true? Chapter 298 I Am Civilization. The Star Pioneer can be said to be the top among the pioneers. Each of them is as rich as a country, and more importantly, they are all amazingly talented. Some people even say that each Star Pioneer represents a possible direction for human civilization. Nanling was one step behind Fanny, and she and Mo sandwiched her on the left and right, but suddenly asked, Mr. Fox, what should I call this Star Pioneer? Fox was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you about the master. It's my fault. The name of my master cannot be mentioned. He calls himself the Seeker of Knowledge. He loves to explore all the unknowns. He is a great pioneer full of enterprising spirit. When Fox mentioned the seekers of knowledge, his respect was not false. In Fox's eyes, this seeker of knowledge has even transcended the mundane category. Fox took them to an inner quiet room of this treasure of stars. The room opened automatically, and the first thing they fell into when they walked in was darkness. Then they saw countless stars in the darkness. Countless stars formed a vast star map, which was the star map of the Milky Way. In this bright silver starlight, a dim figure stood quietly in it, as if in a daze. Until the door behind everyone closed, the figure suddenly said, "The Milky Way is still too small." Nanling was surprised. He looked at Fox again, but saw that this person was already standing quietly in the darkness, as if he was accustomed to the style of the owner here. Fanny wanted to speak, but because they had agreed not to talk nonsense before, she could only keep asking in the group, "Should I say something?" Mo suggested, "It's better to say less than more. You can try to say something along with what he said. Of course, it might be better to say nothing." Nanling suggested, "Anyway, these are just opening remarks to start a conversation. Just say what you think." Li Ji and Hong Shi remained silent. Anyway, they knew that their opinions were not important. Fanny looked at the two opinions and chose Nanling's without hesitation, because it was more in line with her personality. She said, "For me, it's still very big." The seeker said lightly, "It's true for you now, but one day you'll feel how narrow it is." Fanny didn't know what to answer for a while, and asked in the group, "What should I do? What should I do? How should I respond to this?" "Mo, since you listened to him, ask him." At this time, he actually got angry, and Mo actually had a temper. Nanling was confused, and Fanny was also confused. He quickly said with a strong desire to survive, "Listen to Mo, just answer according to his words." Fanny also had a strong desire to survive, and she immediately said, "Okay, maybe you were right." The seeker was suddenly puzzled when he heard this and said, "In fact, you three don't have to be so nervous about how to answer my questions, just answer according to your own wishes." The implication was that he actually saw through their private communication. "Well, this is indeed uncomfortable, or can we talk privately, one-on-one?" As soon as the voice fell, Nanling felt that his perception had been extremely severed. He found that he seemed to be completely separated from the world around him, and he was suddenly in a very mysterious independent space. This space was very small, only the distance from him to the shadow of the seeker in front of him, and everyone around him disappeared without a trace. Nanling was a little anxious, but the shadow had already said, "Don't worry, your companions are all with you. To be honest, your team is really full of potential. In addition to two amazing little girls, a young but potential digital life, there is actually a devout cultivator like you who has the 11th level of foundation building." Thongchip didn't mention it, maybe his situation was very common in the eyes of the seeker. Nanling didn't expect that his background would be discovered by this seeker at a glance, which made him very nervous. But thinking that the level of this great being was so different from his, he took a deep breath and calmed down, just responding with silence. The seeker didn't need him to answer the question, but just sighed. "It's been 20,000 years, and this is the first time I've seen you in this situation. Or to be more precise, this is the first time I've seen this situation since the modern cultivation system was established." Nanling was touched, but he remained silent. The amount of information was huge, and it also brought him many questions, but he just couldn't help but not ask. Finally, the black shadow of the seeker suddenly asked, "Why haven't you formed a pill yet? What are you waiting for?" Nanling finally answered, "I'm waiting for a suitable opportunity to arrange the 12th level of spiritual formation in my body." The black shadow of the seeker was not surprised by this, but just said calmly, "This is a good idea, but it will be easier for you to form a pill, but it will hinder the transformation of the nascent soul. The 12th-level spiritual formation is a boost to forming a pill, but also a shackle for the transformation of the nascent soul. You must be mentally prepared." Nanling was stunned when he heard this, and then he made some deductions in his mind. He knew that the 12-layer spirit formation would exert tremendous pressure on his spiritual power and spirit when he was forming the pill, and these elements could be better combined to increase the success rate and strength of the pill. But when he was in the infant stage, this would become a shackle, making it difficult for him to break the pill and become an infant. And he could deduce that the difficulty increase here was not a simple accumulation, but a geometric increase. After Nanling figured this out, he suddenly said cheerfully and confidently, "That's it, when I break the cocoon and become an infant, I can become even more powerful." The seeker of knowledge heard this and said happily, "If that's the case, I would like to be your friend." He said it sincerely. It was still a distant thing for Nanlin, but he seemed to have regarded it as an imminent result. Nanling also relaxed a little and said with emotion, "It would be my honor." Then the seeker of knowledge suddenly changed the subject and said, "I have read your game records. It's amazing. You have ideas to develop a new combat system according to the situation." At this time, Nanling couldn't help but ask, could it be that the Nether Locust will eventually return? The seeker of knowledge laughed and said, "I thought you would have asked a long time ago. Those two little girls asked it a long time ago." My answer is, I don't know if they will come back, but the purpose of making this game is actually to gather everyone's wisdom to help us find the answer to break the deadlock, and by the way, do something for our mother civilization. You see, your appearance means that our attempt is very successful. At this point, he suddenly asked back, "Do you know why I want to see you?" Nanling shook his head. The seeker of knowledge said with emotion, "Because from your game data I can tell that you actually already have the basic conditions to become a star pioneer." He paused, looked at Nanling and said word by word, "I am civilization. P.S. My wife is hospitalized for pneumonia. Although the cost will be very high, the medication used in the inpatient department is different. I can finally breathe a sigh of relief and spend money to buy peace." Chapter 299 Firmly supporting monogamy. I am civilization. This sentence stunned Nanling. It was not that he could not understand it, but at this moment, his mind appeared the Zhuoxia ship he was on and the countless technologies and information on the Zhuoxia ship. He couldn't help but make a hypothesis. If one day the human race was extinct, could he and the Zhuoxia ship create a new civilization? The answer is yes. But don't get me wrong, it's not about giving birth to a race, but using the life technology stored in the Zhuoxia ship to cultivate a new human embryo. Even further, he thought that if he could perfect the 12th level of the Thunder Spirit Array in his body, he could mine in the void, and then create a fusion furnace by himself to become a base that can expand infinitely. This, the Seeker said lightly. It seems that you have realized something. I will point you in the right direction. Nanling nodded in agreement and said, "Thank you for your advice, the Seeker. This is very important." He thanked him sincerely. Although it was just a matter of words, it was like a dim street lamp suddenly lit up in the fog ahead while he was groping forward. The seeker of knowledge actually laughed happily. He said, okay, is there anything I can help you with? If not, I'll leave." The joy of this great man came strangely. Nanling was slightly stunned, and then said sincerely, "No, you have already given me the greatest help, and I dare not ask for anything else. And as you said, I am civilization. If I need anything, I can get it by my own strength." The seeker of knowledge said happily, very good, you and the two little girls are very good. You know, they both asked about the immortal boat of immortality at the same time, you must cherish them well. I'm lonely, and it is a blessing to have a confidant, but you have two confidantes." Nanling was embarrassed by what he said, making him seem like a scumbag and a pervert. God has mercy on him, but he has been a virgin until now, and has never let anyone succeed. But the next moment he was stunned, the surroundings suddenly became bright. The shadow of the seeker of knowledge also disappeared with the light around him, and the whole room was exposed to the light. Beside Nanling, his companions looked around in surprise. They were all back. Nanling looked at Fanny and Mo with some expectation. He didn't expect that they would use the precious opportunity to ask about the Antarctic Changsheng. Although this was related to his life experience, he didn't care about it for a long time. Fanny seemed to notice that his eyes suddenly became a little ambiguous, and she couldn't help but look over unexpectedly, then turned her head proudly and held it up instead. If he didn't know about her efforts, Nanling would only think that this was the temper of a young lady, but now he knew that this young lady had always secretly kept him in her heart, and this look had a kind of cute feeling. But how should he respond? He looked at Mo again, this wife who always responded to him with tenderness and tolerance. This was his destiny. What a troublesome problem. His current problem is not whether to be a scumbag, because he knows that even if he doesn't want to be a scumbag, he will give in one day. After all, it is the most difficult to enjoy the favor of a beauty. What he is struggling with now is how to respond to Fanny's feelings without making his beloved sister Mo sad. Well, as far as this issue is concerned, he is already a scumbag. At this time, Fox stepped forward and spoke again. "The master has left. You can go to the front hall to enjoy the dance." Fanny was a little embarrassed. She asked, "Where did the seeker of knowledge go?" Fox said, "In fact, the master has never really come. He just descended on the projection of this place with a will." The real master should still be pioneering at the edge of the Milky Way. In fact, I'm always worried that he will not be able to help but rush out of the Milky Way and explore the endless dark deep space outside. Nanling felt yearning after hearing this. This Xingcan pioneer who called himself the Seeker of Knowledge really deserves the name of a pioneer. I wonder what his origin is. But it sounds like he has existed for at least 20,000 years. Nanling doesn't know what kind of flesh and blood life can live for 20,000 years, because the current human life technology cannot do this. I don't know what kind of existence this Xingcan pioneer will have. They followed Fox back to the banquet ballroom, where many teams had gathered and were dancing on the dance floor. Fanny and Mo, who were dressed in their best clothes, were eager to try. But Nanling hesitated for a moment and immediately decided, it's meaningless. I'd better go back first. He showed a lonely mood and didn't want to join in the fun. This was indeed very disappointing, but Mo and Fanny were relieved. Because they didn't know how to continue the next scene. Should they compete to invite Nanling to dance? That would make them very uncomfortable. Just as Nanling walked back, they naturally followed him. At the same time, Fanny quickly pulled a small group of 3 people. She said, "We can't go on like this. This is too weird and makes me feel very, very uncomfortable." Did she decide to tell it all? Nanling's heart tightened and she couldn't help but look at Mo. Mo was also a little nervous. She didn't know what Fanny was going to say. Fanny said, "I admit that I don't hate you and I can accept you as my man. But you must not be so self-indulgent. I just don't hate, well, I like you quite a bit, that's all, you know." Why does it seem like the more you explain, the worse it gets? Fanny also realized something, her face flushed, and she hurriedly tried to explain. "No, it's not the kind of liking you think, it's, Nanling immediately said for her. "It's the kind of very good friends." Fanny breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Yes, it's the kind of very good and tacit friends, but Mo is different to me. I absolutely don't want to have any disputes with Mo because of you." Nanling agreed. "I couldn't agree more, although I also like the boss, but I also don't want to make Sister Mo sad." Fanny suddenly walked quickly to Nanling's side and stretched out her hand and said, "Then have we reached a consensus?" Nanling nodded. "A consensus." Then he stretched out his hand, pinched Fanny's hand and shook it gently. The tacit understanding was real. After letting go, Nanling silently let go. Then Fanny smiled, turned around and grabbed Mo and hung on her. She looked extremely obsessed. At the same time, she did not forget to give Nanling a fierce look. It seemed to say, "Mo is mine, if you have the guts, come and grab it." Nanling calmly stretched out her hand to say, "I'll let you play for a while first." Mo was confused and suddenly felt a lot of pressure. She had no idea how the brain circuits of these two were. Obviously, although she was a little upset, she could barely accept Fanny sharing Nanling's situation with her. How did it become that Fanny and Nanling agreed on how to divide her? "Mo, why don't you just marry me?" Fanny said the tiger's wolf words coquettishly. Mo was completely confused. She already had a husband, how could she get married? Chapter 300. Onic Crisis. Mo was stunned for a long time about suddenly becoming a representative of atypical monogamy. But thinking about it, she felt that she couldn't do this, but the 2 people around her seemed to think it was nothing, and were very happy to turn her into a scumbag. However, no matter what, Mo herself was greatly relieved. She suddenly realized that it didn't matter what kind of relationship the 3 of them had. What mattered was that they could find a way to coexist. Now it seems that the current situation is the most perfect balance. Just when she was about to say something helplessly, they had already arrived at the door of the hall. And at this moment, the door of the hall was pushed open by someone. A man covered in blood rushed in from outside the door. His chest was burnt and his flesh was a mess. But when he looked up and saw Nanling, his eyes lit up and he said tremblingly, "Quick, back door, go." Nanling recognized this person at once. Wasn't this the waiter from before? At this moment, his mind immediately spread out, sweeping towards the seriously injured and dying waiter. Good guy, what did he see? The outside was controlled by a group of robots, and the waiters were surrounded by robots pointing weapons. Outside, it was unknown when a group of fully armed robots had controlled the place. This was really amazing. The people in the banquet hall didn't notice this at all, and this waiter would risk his life to report the news. Nanling took this matter seriously. He relaxed his hands forward and raised them horizontally, and then released a warm wind that he carefully controlled. The oxygen molecules in the warm wind were merged into the dying waiter's blood, which made his blood rich in oxygen even if he didn't breathe. But the blood didn't flow. The man's heart was broken, and the blood that couldn't flow had eventually killed him. At this time, Nanling gritted his teeth, and suddenly crossed his hands and made the water seal gesture that he had just researched not long ago. Using his fingers as a seal, he attracted some water spirit power, and then he refined the water spirit power with his own mind, making it a primer, and then merged it into the waiter's body to guide the flow. In this way, the blood slowly began to flow again. Even though Nanling had the LV7 water control technique, he still found it difficult because this was different from the concept of cold he understood. He wanted the water spirit to lead the blood to flow, and he wanted to give the waiter a chance to survive. Mo and Fanna showed amazing tacit understanding at this moment. They stood on both sides of Nanling, and then they raised their hands at the same time. A fire wheel suddenly rotated around the three of them. It was the scorching sun. There was also a silver moon slashing down obliquely, picking up all the energy beams shot by the robot in front of him. This is extremely precise magnetic field control, which can deflect the magnetic field of attacking energy. Nanling had stabilized the blood of the poor waiter, and then said to Li Ji, "Sister Li Ji, please open the folding storage compartment in your body. There is a small box called Emergency Plan No. 2 inside. Please help me take it out." Li Ji was a digital life, and she took a breath of cold air at this time. She said, "How many things have you stuffed into my body that I don't know about?" As soon as the voice fell, she directly opened the clothes on her abdomen, and then tore open the artificial skin on her abdomen to open it, revealing the storage compartment. She took out the combat armor of Fanny, Mo, Nanling and Hongxi from the storage compartment one after another, and then found the Emergency Plan No. 2 mentioned by Nanling in the corner. When Nanling opened the small box, revealing 2 rows of 6 tubes of unknown reagents inside, the people around were dumbfounded. At this time, the battle around was completely started. In addition to the robots at the main entrance, the same robots quickly rushed into the doors and windows around the Palace of Treasure of Stars. Mo responded without hesitation. The magnetic field on Lingyu exploded, directly sealing the main gate of the palace from the inside. The robot immediately attacked the main gate, but this expensive door was not just for show. It was made of the highest grade superalloy and could withstand the impact of these robots. However, Mo frowned slightly and said, "Why can't this door be locked?" Li Ji said in a cold and hurried tone, "It is impossible to invade. This palace is controlled by another digital life at this time." Mo said, "No wonder my invasion failed." Then she said, "Then we can only use force." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her white jade-like fingers and turned them casually. Suddenly, there was a click sound around the main gate. She used her physical invasion method to directly control the lock of this superalloy main gate. What's more, she also burned the control system of the lock, which was equivalent to completely sealing this entrance. The digital life that secretly controlled the situation showed its helplessness at this time. No matter how powerful its computing power was and how powerful its ability to control these technological products was, it could not change the result of this physical invasion. Boom. Thongship, wearing his combat armor, swung his arm and slapped a robot that rushed up. Then he drew out his most cherished spiritual sword and killed all the enemies with one sword amid the sound of swords. His swordsmanship had unknowingly improved to an extraordinary level, with a feeling that the sword could break the enemy as fast as thunder. This performance naturally attracted the attention of many people, and they subconsciously leaned over here. Although all the people present were elites, it would not be a big problem even if they confronted the robots with their bodies, but the difference between having weapons and not having them was still too big. The first was a serious lack of security. Robots were still rushing in from all sides, but fortunately the main door was locked, and everyone was able to resist it completely. At this time, Nanling had already injected an injection into the chest of the waiter, and the injury on his chest was recovering visibly. Mo looked down and said, "You actually hit some of this stuff?" She recognized it immediately, but she didn't explain it clearly because of the situation at the time. Nanling nodded and said, "Well, this is based on the formula that Uncle Gyu and his team have developed." "That's true, but its raw materials are now non-renewable resources, which are the ancient blood pulp extracted from the corpses of those blood lice. This is the key raw material, and the rest are just auxiliary materials used to stimulate and adjust the medicinal properties. And this injection actually brought the dead back to life, which is even beyond the scope of science. But this is the highest biological science of the King Shuan civilization, it is so unreasonable." Nanling nodded with satisfaction when he saw this, and by the way, he obtained a lot of detailed experimental data. This is a rare human experiment material, just to see how this medicine works on the human body and whether there are side effects. As for why he brought the ancient blood pulp of blood lice, well, he brought more than just this. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.